Good evening, Holliston, and welcome to the August 29th, 2024 meeting of the Holliston School Committee, our first meeting of the 2024-2025 school year. Welcome back, everyone. So we will get right into our agenda. There's a lot going on, but we'll start off with the consent agenda. Someone have a motion to approve the consent agenda. No gifts, just the July 18th minutes and a whole slew of warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. Moving on. We're off to a great start. Look at that, we started late, but we're still 5 minutes ahead of time. So, report from the student representatives. Our representatives are engaged, probably
Not the football game.
Probably cheering the
football game.
football game. So that is far more important than this. So now school committee individual comment. Sarah.
Congratulations to the girls soccer team. We just won their scrimmage.
Yay!
That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Heard School Palooza was a success. Everyone had fun. I was sad not to make it, but I heard from a ton of people they had a ton of fun, and it was a great start to the school year. Yeah, good first days. No issues on post the first day. We'll talk later about pre-first day, but post-first day, it sounds like everything went well. And congratulations to all the rising grades.
Welcome back to all the educators and students, and thank you to all the educators for making those first couple of days really special for our students.
Yeah, I just hope everyone had a great first day back, and wish the best of luck to the football team that's playing out there right now.
Yeah, where's the screen?
The School Palooza, was that sponsored by the class of 2027? Oh, Mrs. Raffy's going to be mad that I didn't get that right.
25 and 26.
25 and 27 or 25 and 26?
25 and 26.
They were both successful. They had fun. Thank you, Mrs. Raffi and the class officers, and there were a bunch of high school students that came to help as well. And I think she said something about like 170 kids came and ran the color run, I think. So a great start to the beginning of the year.
A lot of little ones.
Welcome. A lot of little ones, which is awesome. I like to see it. And welcome Dr. Jordan to the first your first meeting here with us. So
Thank you. Excited.
No comment.
Cynthia stole my left thunder, but welcome. Just a better version of Keith, and maybe Ken too. Additionally, I attended the opening day for teachers with the administrative team there, and there was a very impressive rising junior, Jay. Junior now. Sorry, yes, a junior now. Not at the time though. He made that clear that he had one more day. Anyway, who had participated in Project 351 and talked about his experiences. And if I could have half of his public speaking skills, I would.
Be at the State House, right?
I have no interest in going to the State House, but tours are fun though. But anyway, that was great. So that was a good addition to that opening day, Dr. Kuska. So we have some really fabulous students here, and so welcome back to all the students, all the teachers, and I hope we have a great school year.
And we'll show you some pictures from opening day a little later.
Awesome. So now we have the opportunity for the public to address the school committee, and since there's nobody in the room, we are going to pass that on to the community public Q&A regarding any information and questions people have regarding the override. And we did get one email with some.
I did get another one too that I told her to forward to everybody, but she didn't forward it to everybody.
Okay.
Can I send it now?
Sure, when you send it now.
I told her to send it again, but
That's
I'll
fine.
forward it to you.
So we've had 9 now information sessions in the course of the summer. Zoom, in person, in the morning, in the evening, on the weekends. And unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of participation. We had another Zoom session this morning where one resident logged in, so I thought, we could offer our meeting and put it on the agenda to ensure that we could discuss it within the open meeting law, and, we went in person to talk about it, but a former member of the school committee did submit comments, Stacy Raffi, and I think Joe and Frank are going to take turns reading that into the record.
You want to kick us off, Joe?
Sure thing.
Go for it.
All right. Dear Holliston School Committee, I'm submitting these questions for public comment during your August 29th, 2024 meeting. Stacy Raffi, 20 Arthur Street. The school committee and the HFT have agreed to a contract that Mr. Alfred has acknowledged the town cannot afford without an override. In the issue of funding, the contract via an override has been put to the public to approve or deny. As the residents' tax dollars will be going directly to pay for salary increases and busing costs, many people are asking for detailed information about the justification for the salary increase laid out in the contract. Unfortunately, the school committee has yet to provide that information in a meaningful way. What would be helpful to do? This would be to post a salary grid showing the current teacher salaries compared to comparable or neighboring towns, and also a salary grid for each year of the new contract alongside similar grids for comparable or neighboring districts for the same years. This would show where our teachers' salaries are compared to other districts and where this contract puts us if it passes. Traditionally, Holliston has always been middle of the road. What is the end goal based on what the town can afford and sustain? Do you want Holliston salaries to be in the middle of the road or at the top of the scale? If the goal is to attract new staff, then ensuring competitiveness at the lower step salaries should be the focus. If the goal is the retention of staff, then comparisons of the uppermost steps would be important. Obviously, Holliston cannot compete with certain towns, for example, Wellesley and Needham. So how much higher does the Holliston School Committee think Holliston needs to go? The ability to attract qualified staff is about more than just compensation. But if you want to focus on compensation, then I suggest that updates to benefits, I know this needs to be worked through with the town, is another channel to have more attractive compensation. Okay, Frank, you continue.
All right. Another piece of the override is the funding of additional buses, which the school committee claims is necessary in order to adjust school start times. Can you clearly show that the allocated amount will fully cover the expense of the condensing bus runs? Why are you asking for $200K in buses to reduce 3 bus runs down to 2 when you do not have a clear plan in place? There has been a bus driver shortage issue for at least a year locally and nationally. Stoughton and Framingham are 2 of the most recent stories. Just last week, Holliston lost a driver that caused routes to be changed, etc. So we can reasonably expect that adding buses and drivers to accommodate the school start time changes will be a challenge. Will the school committee commit to going through a thorough process, surveying and soliciting input from parents and families before finalizing the school start time changes? There is no provision in the MOA for community input, although the school committee has expressed intention to do so. The school committee chair has promised, quotes, that the school start times will be changed regardless of whether the override passes or not. So it appears that start times in your school will have absolutely changed one way or another, and that's admirable. But what happens if you need more money than the $200,000 because drivers are demanding more money, where there is such a shortage, or you need more time than what is promised in this MOA? As for Holliston Group is claiming that there will be a $30,000 reduction in traffic per their flyer. 30%, sorry, 30%. But is there data to back up this fact? If there is data-driven fact, voters deserve to be shown the data before agreeing to pay for buses through this override. Mr. Peru.
In the past weeks, a lot has been written on social media about the consequence of a failed override vote. For example, Mr. Alfred made the statement, quote, "We need to move past the nitty-gritty and understand if this doesn't pass, the only ones who will truly suffer will be our students," end quote. I think this is a very dangerous statement. As voters, we absolutely need to understand the nitty-gritty in order to make informed choices. We don't know that students will suffer if they don't get 15 minutes more of instructional time. That is yet to be defined. Please stop using emotions to drive the campaign. Use data to help drive voters to an informed vote. What are the measurements of the positive outcomes of this override? What do you mean by move the district forward? Do you mean improved rankings? Do you mean closing academic achievement gaps? What are the positive outcomes that we should be expecting? Mr. Alford stated in the comments of the Holliston Reporter article, quote, "All that voting this override down would do would be to crush morale and add significant uncertainty to people about their careers and livelihoods, as well as students and parents about what the future of HPS looks like," end quote.
We've exceeded the 3 minutes, so this is entered into the record, correct? Are we going to continue beyond the 3 minutes allotted for public comment?
This is Q&A, so
Okay.
let's let it ride.
Continue? Okay. What does that mean? It sounds like speculation that there will be cuts. Yes for Holliston has said that in their flyer under the question about the override failing, quote, "There is a significant risk of cuts to programs or staff across all schools," end quote. What will these cuts look like? The voters deserve to know the consequences, not speculation of a no vote. Mr. Alford's above statement is hyperbole. Threatening cuts and threatening that teachers are just going to leave is irresponsible. It puts the teachers and it puts the community in an unnecessary awkward place. Again, is this speculation, or did the HFT indicate that they are aware of a group of teachers willing to leave if the override fails? Frank.
If this override is to fund salaries and buses plus $41,000 for town hall employee salary adjustments, why would programs be in jeopardy? Speculation is leading to all sorts of what-ifs. We need to take out the emotion and stick to the facts. I see this as fear-mongering. You are leading people to think if voters opt to vote down the override, they don't support the teachers. That is a statement that cannot be backed up with data. When the issue of morale is invoked, that's a dangerous argument on which to fund an override. What are measurements of morale? How do you know morale has changed, or how do you know it's a result of a COLA? Will the school committee follow up teacher surveys to measure whether morale has increased? Finally, there are other districts who have had a successful override to open conversation of opportunities to move their district forward. I'm not convinced that Holliston needs an override to open conversations and have opportunities to move the district forward. If there is a collaborative environment between HSC and HFT and administration, those conversations should be happening outside of a contract. I am convinced that the school committee needs to prioritize the ask, whether it be an override for a high school project or other capital projects or contractual obligations, because the residents of this town may not be willing to say yes over and over again when there are other priorities in town. There are less than 2 weeks to provide the voters with information they need to make an informed choice. It would be helpful if your answers were shared during your school committee meeting this week and posted to the district website. It would also be helpful if you pointed people to the FAQ when you communicate with the community about the override. Stacy Rafferty.
So I'm going to take a moment to respond to some of that, and then other members of the committee should do the same. To the last point, we have been sharing the FAQs and then the link to the website where we have information. But I did put together a little bit of data. And I will share some of that now. Let's see. Why is it coming up? Where's the full screen? It's up here. Yeah, it's up here.
Yeah, you gotta hit the little thing at the bottom.
Thank you. All right, so just briefly, this is a chart that we've shown before, but just to remind everybody sort of where we sit. Holliston has below average class sizes for our comparable districts. Our per pupil spending is the lowest of all of our peer comp towns. Our residential tax base is on the lower side, below the our residential tax base is on the higher side as a percentage of revenue, and our average single-family tax bill is below the average of our peers. and kind of in line with a lot of the neighboring peers.
So Holliston's the bright red bar.
Holliston is the bright red bar, and then the brown is the average, and the blue is the other districts. Okay. So this is a slide that has been part of our presentation that we put up at town meeting, and it's really a picture sort of where this new contract will put us compared to our peers. I think it's important that we look at things this way rather than looking at just the gross dollar amounts. The gross dollar amounts obviously matter to those that are getting paid, but if we're looking at pay, we care about how we pay relative to other towns and other districts. And so to really what this shows, green, by the way, is that Holliston is paying above that square. Red means we're paying below. Gray is we're in with plus or minus 2%. And so light green and light red are 3 to 9%, or it's actually 2 to 9%. Dark green and dark red are 9 to 15% above or below, and then the darkest red and green are above 15%. So what this shows is that on the new first step that we're going to have compared to other districts' first steps, we are incredibly competitive. We will be paying teachers coming into the district more than most other towns in the district. However, as teachers become more senior and when you look at the max step, we are paying more in line with sort of the median.
And that's if the override passes, right? This
is 2025.
Okay.
We can't compare 2026 or 2027 because most of the districts that we are comparing ourselves to don't have contracts for 26 and 27. There are only a few districts that had signed contracts in the last couple of years, and so any comparison would just be a few districts, and that wouldn't really give you a good comparison. I realize that there's a lot of information on the slide. We've had this slide up on our website, though. We can put it up again, but this is, I think, the fairest and most sort of useful way for the residents to sort of see where we are going to be paying. I also think it's incredibly important for people to realize that contracts are not easily comparable. Different districts pay differently. Some put more money into a longevity payment. Some put more money into other types of benefits. Every contract is different and has sort of grown over the course of the life of the contract. So simply saying, okay, a master's degree with 10 years of education does not necessarily give you the best picture of what the total compensation of those people, of that employee are. Some districts have more stipend opportunities. So there's all different ways of comparing it. So looking at it just a gross number and trying to compare it is not, in my view anyway, and it's not how we looked at it when we were negotiating the contract. And this is how we're talking about things, how we looked at it when we were negotiating the contract. So I hope the community looks at this, realizes that yes, we are in 2025 are going to be paying very competitively. And by 2026, we don't know, but I would bet you that this looks a lot more red or neutral than it certainly does today, or for 2025.
So Dan, before you move on to the slide, I wonder whether it'd be useful, this seems just like kind of obtuse to me. So I'm just wondering whether there's a way for you to kind of extrapolate this data into actual numbers. So like if you're a first year teacher in, I can't even see, Ashland, how much is that teacher making at first step?
But that's exactly what I'm saying is not.
No, I understand that's not, like, so is there a possibility for us to take 3 or 4 of these districts to see where they match us as closely as aligned in terms of things like our benefits package, which I know that we are an outlier on, so that's something that we could be,
We don't have an analysis of a total compensation package, if you will. So we don't have data to say, okay, at this step, this kind of, because first of all, you have to, is that person taking a family plan? Are they taking a PPO versus an HMO? Are they taking, are they...
Well, that's not their salary.
Well, you just said their benefits.
No, I'm just saying, okay, so I guess what I mean is if we know that Ashland is a 70-30 town and then their first step is whatever, does that help us to determine differently?
I don't think looking at any one individual town versus us is all that meaningful.
I'm saying that as an example. But I'm saying if we just take a few towns that are like towns that match us closely in terms of contract, and so maybe we maximize our hourly pay over things like having holiday pay, whereas others might have holiday. We don't have that.
We don't have that. We also have a different number of days that teachers work versus some other places. We're not looking at a per diem. I'm just that's why this is so complicated, and why I don't want to look at just I don't think it's not that I don't want to. It's not, I don't think that looking at gross numbers makes sense. So if you look at it, and if you're looking at us versus Ashland, next year we will pay more for a master's first step by 7%.
Okay, but what is that number? Like you're saying it's plus 4%.
Why does that matter?
No.
I mean, seriously, why does the number matter?
Because I think that people want to know what is a competitive salary that we're paying our teachers. Like, what is that number? What is the number?
Our master's first step will be 3.3% above the average for our peer districts.
And what is that number?
I mean,
Is
the
it
current contract is available out there.
60,000?
I don't have the number off the top of my head. It's 3.3% above, and then by the time you get to the max step of masters, it's 1.7% below the average.
I get it. I just think this is hard to visualize. That's all I'm saying. I can see what
Percent
you're
though does
talking about.
equalize it though, Cynthia? Like, if you look at the raw numbers, sure. I mean, how you got to these percents, you had the raw numbers, we could look at those. But percent is what equalizes each level and step and says how much is it greater or less than.
I'm just trying to look at another way of visualizing the data, that's all. And I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts on this. I'm throwing it out there.
I can put this into a graph form if you'd like. To me, looking at a gross number doesn't, it starts the conversation going down a direction that it doesn't seem to be, something that I think that is important. First of all, we're not actually
but
voting.
I think it is important.
We're voting on a $1.1 million, $1.1 million. Right, that's what people are voting on. The people are not voting on this contract. Yes, underpinning it is the contract, but people are not voting. We're not negotiating this contract with the public. We're explaining what's in the contract. We're explaining where our pay is.
By sharing the raw numbers, what you're going to argue is, should, as teacher at this level, this step be making that? The percent show how we compare against the other competing districts.
And I find the ability to color code it as well as being above or below. And what is there, 15 different comparisons?
There are 15 different comparisons.
Over not just bachelor's, master's plus 30, master's plus 60, but analyzing it as first step, maximum step. I mean, there's certainly, all of these contracts are available online. I mean, I think it's also important to know what kind of percentages districts are seeing, right? For example, Ashland settling on their 3.33, but without the increased instructional time. Wayland, latest contract at a 4.33. So
and Ashland also increased their longevity payments significantly. So that's not in
I think that's relevant information as well. But, I mean, what I see here is a comparison to 15 different districts over 8 different bachelor's first. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of information. It's not, comparing to one district isn't going to be accurate either. So
I wouldn't be looking at just one. I understand that you have 15 districts that you're looking at, or how many, I can't even see how many you have on there. But I just think that this is hard to digest, is what I'm saying.
I think we're all different learners, and to me, this is like, this
okay.
is,
but if you're someone who is applying to come to work here, looking at this graph doesn't tell them anything, really.
the person applying to come to work here is not the people we're talking to right now.
I understand.
That once everything is ratified and settled, then we take that contract document and we turn it over to the administration and we turn it over to the union and we say, go forth and prosper, and come to us if there are problems. But I mean that our job is not to implement or enforce the contract. And I think that's what a lot of the confusion in the community right now is they are expecting us to have not only negotiated the contract, but also implemented or come up with a concrete plan for implementing the contract That's not the Holliston School Committee's job. I don't know how many times people have told me to stay in my lane. I'm staying in my lane. That's not our job, is to implement the contract. That's these much more educated people than I am for education. That's their job. And then we obviously provide the oversight.
I'm not suggesting that.
No, but I'm just
looking for more clarity, that's all.
Okay.
I don't have the answer. We'll have to workshop it.
okay. So moving on. One of the things that, Stacy talked a lot about is fear-mongering and about morale and the impact that morale has on our kids and on our district. And so I wanted to put this up and share this with the community. I think this is an incredibly, incredibly important slide for us all to look at. And I want to explain it for a minute. So the blue is the median of our peer group, and this is all from DESI data. So, there could be some imperfections here or there, but we're comparing it to 19 different districts. And this is the median retention rate of just teachers. We're not talking about paraprofessionals, secretaries, any other employees, just teachers. And this is the retention rate since 2009 of the median of our peer group, Holliston, and then the difference between Holliston and the median. Numbers above 0 are good. That means we have a higher retention rate than the median. Numbers below 0 means that we have a lower retention rate than the median. And what this does is this filters out the COVID impact to retention rates. Because obviously we had a great resignation, there was a lot more turnover during COVID, but how did we perform versus our peers? In 2020, there was a contract that was signed in March, and the school committee then voted that down in May due to the uncertainty of COVID. And I will be the first one to recognize that as a member of the Finance Committee, I concurred with that view. We had no idea what was happening at the time. The federal government had not dumped billions of dollars into the economy. ARPA hadn't happened. CARES hadn't happened. We had no idea. There were towns that had contracts that they couldn't afford, and they were slashing teachers and slashing costs left and right. You had towns that were relying on restaurant taxes that were cutting immediately because they were immediately impacted. But what happened is over the next 2 years, as the consternation and the consternation increased, morale decreased, is a dramatic decline in our retention rates. This is the data. This is what I'm talking about when I say that if we have a failed contract and a failed override, what will happen, or what I expect will happen. I can't say it for certain, but what I expect will happen in our district as we go forward and try to come up with a new contract. We had just started to rebound last year from that decline. I look at that decline is incredible. We went from almost 2% above to 6% below our median peer. That is a huge, and just think about the number of teachers. And how does that impact kids? Well, as you have greater turnover in your teachers, it takes longer to get for new staff on board. And if anybody who has been involved in hiring people, that takes time, and then people take time to get ramped up and up to speed. That impacts kids. So when I tell you, when I say online that this will shooting down, this contract will only negatively impact the kids, this is what I'm talking about.
I think it's important to note, too, the lagging effect, right? Because 2020 is when that happened, right? I think we all agree.
This data was reported in early 2020. Yes.
Yeah, but there's the lag. The pain that went through 2020 through 2021 has reverberated through really last year, and finally, with hope of a new contract, I would say, again, correlated, not causated, 2024 has improved, but we're still below the median.
Slightly below, but kind of in line with where we bounced around with, at least historically. On the lower end, but at least we've gotten back to kind of within. It's been that last year was a significant recovery. We don't want to go back.
And to remind the public, though, the median, against the median, gets rid of all of the other, like Great Resignation, all the factors. Holliston was more negatively impacted than others.
Yes.
And who is included in this data?
The
Like
peer,
you're a
all,
teacher, so is it paraprofessional?
no, as I said, this is just people who are coded by DESE as educators. I don't know what.
That's what I was-
Yeah.
Yeah, on DESE, they don't report paraprofessionals retention, they just report teachers and administration on the website.
I strongly urge anyone in the community to look at this chart. Pay attention to this chart.
I think we should make it more public, Dan.
Let's make it more public. This is a little something when we taped a session with Mary Greendale, I talked about, because there has been other, it was, I don't think necessarily brought up by Stacy, but it's been brought up in the community about, everyone's houses are going up in value. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but because it's just a lot of numbers here. And everyone but me hates numbers, but whereas I love numbers. But anyway, I went and the state and then DESE report average assessed values. Not perfect because assessed values, that's lagging. But over the past, since 2010, which was the last override in town, Holliston's home assessed values have gone up by 64.5%. Because a lot of people compare us to Hopkinton. The glory days, Hopkinton's are up 74.7%, so 10% more. During that time, Hopkinton's school districts in-district spending, according to DESE, or at least until 2022, was up twice as Holliston's. And you can look at Ashland's values were up 80%. Their investment went up. Their investment in their schools was 50% versus our 32%. And there are a lot of things going on here. It's not sort of perfect, but a 10% difference between us and Hopkins. So when you say, "Oh, my homes are everyone's home is going up in value," well, if you have the median home price in Holliston at $650,000, if you would have that home in Hopkinton, you'd have $65,000 more of equity in your home. I don't know about other people, but that seems like real money. So this is an investment in education that does impact your property values. There have also been comments about how the Holliston Public Schools always get more and have what we always see the benefits of the town while everybody else has gets less. And I will tell you, I am partially at fault for that misperception. Because in my 11 years on the Finance Committee always put forward a guideline budget of 1.5%, almost always. It was, and the schools always came in more. They frustrated the heck out of me because they refused to meet the guideline budget, even tell us how they would get to the guideline budget, whereas other departments in town did. But what people then missed was, it kind of happened on a cycle. Different departments would get much more in a year. They'd get an additional employee. They'd get more hours for an employee, and so you'd have budgets that would be up 20% in a given year, or 30% in a given year. So over time, what happened is the schools over the last 15 years, budget has gone up by 2.8%. This is just through fiscal year 24, so I didn't add the most recent fiscal year just because there's uncertainty in our budget and I just want to keep it clean. But on the right, you can see those orange cells are the departments that had an average increase over those 15 years on a percentage basis that was greater than the schools. So 2/3 of the departments in town, and there's some moving around again. I didn't clean every single piece of the data, so things like the select board budget had moved out and they created a new HR budget. So there's a bunch of different things going on, but this misperception that the schools are taking everything is just that, a misperception.
And compared Holliston schools to Keefe Tech, how much as a percentage has that gone up?
So Keefe Tech has gone up 8.8%, and that is
Holliston schools.
2.8%. But I can tell you though, the majority of the Keefe Tech budget increase has been increased enrollment. Anecdotally, I'll just tell you, looking at it year to year, Keefe Tech's underlying budget increased less than Holliston's usually did. But because the enrollment at Keefe Tech it's gone up, and our assessment is based on our enrollment and the percentage of total students at Keefe Tech, you see that 8.8% increase. just lastly, the slide I put just comparing the override ask versus sort of the average in the state this year. And then Frank was kind enough to put together the worst looking slide.
I know. Somehow it became the worst.
And just there have been a request out there to sort of see things graphically, the impact on different home values of the override. And so right there you see 650. The median is $201,000. But if you want to put your home in there to sort of approximately where your home is, you can do that too. And then it's obviously 31 cents on the thousand if you actually want to take your property value and cut.
I think the important thing here is looking at this chart. Your house is under $1 million, you're paying less than $300, and then not to diminish less than $300, but less than $300 more a year. Like, just to make that, because we've quoted the average, but let's be real, most of the, and I don't have the number of houses that are over $1 million, but
That's in the chart that we have.
There is a chart.
Though.
Below $1 million, though, is the majority, and that's under $300 increase a year.
Right. And actually, the majority, there are more homes below the median.
Yes.
So the majority of homes are actually below $200.
Yep. Which I think is less than 3 rounds of golf a year.
So a home assessed at 500,000, tax assessment is 155 a year. And this is something we're putting on our website as
We can
well.
put this on our website. I'll add a little bit of
Just as a
commentary, just so we're not just throwing numbers up there. But,
With a cart?
let me see. Did I miss anything else? There's been a lot of discussion about, and I think Stacy discussed it in hers, but, about us tightening our belt and the consequences, and we just did around the playoffs. We cut 8 positions. I don't want people to forget this. We cut $400,000 out of our budget, which was 8 positions, and now it wasn't all people that ended up leaving the district. It was at least one. But the Holliston Public Schools and the school committee and the administration, we have taken a very prudent approach to budgeting. We have cut costs, $400,000 of costs, 1% of our budget. And I don't want people to lose sight of that. I guess we are asking. We have requested an override, but this is not like we are not looking for places to save and where it's going into this. We are making prudent, fiscally responsible decisions. Does anyone else want to comment? Or we have one other public comment that was submitted to us. It is also fairly lengthy. But we can read that. Does anyone else?
The only thing I want to say is, on the record is, we're saying fear-mongering and whatnot, but I have to put in my head, and I don't have a kid in the school district yet, but I think about if my kid was in the school district. And yes, there's no cuts right away, but there will be cuts at some point needed when we can't afford to contract. And looking at my son and saying, your teacher's gone because I could have made a difference, I don't think it's fear-mongering. I think it's reality. And I think we need to look at that. And whether you have kids in the school district or not, and say, is this the right time? Is this the time at all to say we're willing to say goodbye to our best and greatest teachers? They have a right to find the right opportunity out there. We don't underpay. I know that statement's been thrown out. I'm not saying about underpaying, but we need to be competitive. Competitive on multiple fronts, whether it's our buildings, which we're working on, and other benefits. But at the same time, salary compensation is an important part, and we need to be competitive to continue to build this district up. And I think there was a statement made saying, if we don't really care, then sure, let's vote this down. But I think we all care as a community, and we need to continue to care. And it's important we think about that before we simply say I'm against this because it's more money and there's no facts. There are facts, and there are things we need to figure out. In Stacy's comment, are you going to involve the community? The reason we haven't made decisions is because we want to involve the community. And we can't involve the community overnight. So we have not made harsh decisions on start times or schedule changes. Those are to come and hold us accountable. But, to demand those answers right now seems premature.
And just to add on to that, there's a lot of, and we'll get into a little bit of this later, but, there's constantly people talking about our rankings and how our rankings have fallen. Well, you know how you don't improve your rankings? You don't pay median. Median school districts get median results. Median pay, it's just, I mean, I don't know how much more clearly it is. If you really just want to, you think that we should be a median district for our compensation, well, fine, then just accept median schools. That's not what I want for my community.
I know we don't have everybody in person here today, but we do have one more office hours community forum on September 7th and at 9 a.m. at Coffee Haven, and would love anyone to bring questions, concerns, want to discuss this further.
Or reach out, email us, set up a time.
Please.
A lot of this is complicated. A lot of people say, well, we need answers online. I mean, and look, I get it. It's sort of easier that way for a lot of people. But some of this stuff cannot be explained online. You don't go and earn a PhD just by exchanging emails with your professor. You go to class, you discuss the difficult subjects, and you learn. So if people really want to learn, reach out to us, talk to us, come to our last information session. Who wants to read, or at least start reading?
Joe and I got the last one.
I can start. Is there an address here?
No.
They didn't list an address. Okay. Allison Quinn, Holliston, Massachusetts. I have some questions that I hope the school committee might be able to answer regarding the specifics of the override. The way I see it, the ratification of the contract between the HFT and the HSC is contingent on the override being approved. And as voters, whether the contract is approved or not is up to us. But the override simply provides money for the COLA increases to the teachers' salaries with some additional funds for buses and, of course, the money for town employees. So I'm really not sure why some of the MOA items were not written as tentatively agreed to or why they cannot be adopted regardless of the passage of the override. For example, parents clearly want to shift in the school start times for the younger students, but the change in start times can be in PAC bargained as it doesn't add time to the school day. Finding $200,000 for buses, should they be needed, shouldn't necessarily require a tax override. Discussion about changing the block schedule at the high school also does not need to be contingent on the override vote. Provision for research and evaluation of the high school schedule already exists in the current contract, and in fact, the current contract language specifically includes administrators as part of that process. The new MOA excludes administrators and creates a very tight timeline, or tight deadline, by which the HFT must vote on any changes. Should the override fail, will the teachers be willing to stick with the current contract language, which allows evaluation of the bell schedule, provides a less strict timeline, and includes administration in the conversation? The added 15 to 10 minutes to the school day will certainly benefit the teachers just as much as the students. Why isn't it being advertised that way? And many people who are being asked to shift money from their pockets, many of whom haven't themselves seen a 4% increase to their own compensation, want to understand whether Holliston really truly is underpaying its teachers currently. A quick look at other school districts shows Holliston teachers to be fairly paid, neither the highest nor the lowest compared to other districts. One teacher noted that Holliston schools have a longer school year than other towns, but the school committee chair stated that Holliston school day is shorter than other towns, so perhaps that balances out and Holliston teachers aren't actually being overworked and underpaid compared to their peers. And others have mentioned that Holliston's employees pay a larger portion of health insurance premiums compared to other towns. Is that something the school committee can address with the town? When we look at pay increases over the last decade, we should be looking at other comparable school districts in Massachusetts and not include private sector jobs, as that is misleading. Finally, there have been some unfounded and fear-based comments about what will happen if the override doesn't pass. Voters should know as specifically as possible what the consequences of a no vote would be. Does it really mean layoffs and programmatic cuts, as some have suggested? Will we lose arts, sports, and after-school programs? Will teachers walk out or go on strike? They shouldn't, as they have agreed to renegotiate should the override not pass. Suggesting that voters will destroy teacher and staff morale and cause uncertainty regarding their careers is not helpful or effective. Facts, details, and answers to questions are what voters need to be able to make informed choices. I acknowledge that the answers to some questions may be, we don't know yet, but almost 3 months have passed since the school committee requested the override vote, so some of the unknowns should now be closer to having answers. And there are definitely some pieces of information which can be provided to voters so they can make their own decisions based on as many facts as possible. If voters are feeling misled, manipulated, or believe that the school committee is not being transparent, they will be less likely to vote in favor of the override. So I hope that the school committee will consider posting some of this information on the website. To that end, here are my questions. How do Holliston teachers' salaries compare to other towns? Are they being underpaid or paid fairly? This can be shown by providing a salary grid of current salaries compared side by side and a salary grid of future salaries compared side by side. The school committee and the superintendent have this information and should share it with the residents whom they are asking to fund the COLA increases. How will the school committee know that the COLA increases have improved morale among teachers and or improved the school's overall position relative to other towns? What are the real consequences of a failed override? What will the process moving past a failed override look like? For example, teachers will continue to be paid at the current contract level, and any renegotiated salary adjustment will be applied retroactively. The term of the current contract will apply until a new contract is agreed to. Will there be staff or program cuts? What other places in the overall school budget will the school committee look at to realize cost savings should the override fail? Give specifics and reasons so voters will know the consequence of a no vote beyond low teacher morale. Some people have suggested that going back to the negotiation table will produce a weaker contract. I hope that a newly negotiated contract would not be weaker, even if it might look different than the current MOA. Some residents have expressed their opinion that the contract language should be stronger, i.e., hall monitoring when plausible, to address the current lack of enforceable language. What would that look like? As I read it, what the town has gained in the new contract that couldn't be addressed with the current contract is the additional 15 to 10 minutes added to the school day. Everything else can be addressed with the current contract in place. What will the school committee do to solve the school start time issue if the override fails? What will the process to evaluate it look like if the override passes? What will happen if buses and drivers can't be secured? What will the busing schedules look like? Will the school committee look back at options previously presented? Will the school committee ask for parent feedback and approval of a new plan? What will the school committee commit to doing beyond increasing teacher salaries to get our schools back on track in terms of rankings? What strategies will they employ and how will they measure improvement? Morale is affected by things other than money. What other methods can Holliston schools use to attract and retain great teachers other than offering higher pay? We will never be able to afford to offer at the very top of the range compared to certain towns. So what else does Holliston have to offer? How will the town fund any changes should the HFT agree to a change in the bell schedule at the Holliston High School? A move away from the current block schedule will likely cost the schools more, so will any change then not occur until after year 3 of the contract? And if so, where will any additional funding come from when any bell schedule change is implemented? The override amount is very narrow and seemingly leaves no room for expansion of staffing and/or programming, reinstatement of prior cuts to staffing and programming, or reduction of parent fees for buses and activities. How will those needs be addressed in the coming 3 years? If enrollment is dropping and outplacements are increasing, as has been suggested, how will that impact the budget going forward for the 3 years of this contract? Will the school committee look at making adjustments to staff due to lower enrollment? And if the result is that there is extra money, how will it be used? I hope the school committee will offer answers to these questions and any others put before them. Voters want information, facts, and data, and not fear tactics or emotional ploys. I support our schools and our teachers, but I also want to make sure that this override will not create division among residents and financial constraints down the road. And I'm very concerned that voters who know we will shortly be asked pay for a new high school, a new DPW facility, downtown sewers, so we can attract new businesses to town, or other needs may decide that they can't afford multiple overrides in a short number of years. So we need to be prepared and provide with information and have real and respectful conversations between now and the vote on September 10th. Thank you for your consideration of my concerns and providing answers to my questions. Allison Quinn.
So just a couple of things before I'll let others respond to some of the stuff, though most of it I think we've already addressed. I have never said that we have a shorter day than most of our peers. I said that many, by and large, of the higher performing districts that we saw and analyzed have a longer day than Holliston. I Additionally, just to clarify things, a change in the schedule of the high school, well, we have no idea what that necessarily would cost, and if we can't afford it, then that's not what we're going to end up having to be able to do. So, to say that it will increase costs is making assumptions that are unfounded. One of the first things that she said, and I think is very important, to clarify, the MOA does not exclude administrators from the schedule process. It does not specifically state the administrators will be on the negotiating, or not the members of that committee, and it is slightly different than the language that's in the contract today. But I think we all realize that is going to be something that's going to be done by the administration and not by us. That is an administrative function, not a school committee function. That committee will work together, will come up with a recommendation that Mr. List will at some point present to the school committee, and that is going to be our role. This is the administrators, that is their job. And we don't have time to do their jobs, and nor should we, and they can do that. So I think some of these things can be discussed, but again, we have made cuts to our budget. So we don't have a list of what cuts would be. We have no idea what the new contract is going to look like, or if we had to go back, what it so to speculate would be fearful. But I will say, having been in the room negotiating the contract, this is an incredibly good contract for Holliston, and I hope that the town, I think it's a good contract.
I wanted to address the statement, finding $200,000 for buses, should they be needed, shouldn't necessarily require a tax override. And not to put you on the spot, Cynthia, but in the last 5 years since we've started the school start time, well, even before that, you started the discussion. I mean, has there ever been just an extra $200,000 in the budget that we could use for buses? Absolutely not. And we certainly, making $400,000 of difficult cuts last year, coming to a budget meeting in which no person in the public came to discuss what some of those cuts were, when we were talking about almost $1 million of cuts, and then being able to refine it down to $400,000 of cuts. None of those decisions were easy after my years on the budget subcommittee and my years on this committee. But one thing I can say with certainty is over the last 5 or 6 years, while discussing things like school start times, we certainly didn't have an extra $200,000 in the budget for buses. So just to be clear, it's not like looking under the couch cushions.
And as I remember, and you were on the committee, I was on the finance committee, but one of the additional buses was always a solution that was there, right? But the whole reason it was not implemented or seriously considered was the cost.
One piece of it was a major piece.
Yeah.
So folks, in the surveys that we did, they wanted a change. They just didn't want to have to pay for it. So it presented us with really only one option, which was to flip the elementary.
Right. Because we didn't want to cut $200,000 out of the budget for buses.
We were going to be able to cut it for something else, because it was going to cost over $200,000. But there were some other logistics as well in terms of like the locations of buses, and were we going to be able to go and put 20 buses in front of Placentino and Midland? Logistics, but we didn't get that far, really.
I want to hone in on the point, the only guarantee is the 15/10 minutes, because the opportunities, and I know online there has been a lot of negative feedback on opportunities, right? Like, we need firmer language. How do we know that, right? How do we know the bus schedule for next year? I mean, through the challenges the administration has to deal with this year with the leave of a driver, new technology, the questions being answered are impossible. Some of them, right? And that's where, like, we need to be open with the community of what we can provide right now, but also hold us accountable to those other questions that we need to figure out. And some of which we don't even need to figure out. We need to work with the administration to figure out.
And the community.
And the community, right? Like, you want a firm answer, but then you say you want involvement, and you can't get both, right? So I don't think we're going to have all the answers right now. But what this opens up is the doors, and doors that have not been opened in the past.
Right. And to
be clear that it is an additional time. It's not, we're going to figure out within the existing schedule extra time. That's not true.
And Dr. Kusk is very clear.
It's 6 hours and 33 minutes. It's now going to be 6 hours and 43 minutes.
Right.
So,
and Dr. Kusk has been very clear that it is instructional time. This is not playground time, recess, lunch. This is instructional time.
You don't figure that out on a weekend.
And you don't figure over the summer when everyone's been away and not paying attention. And, you know, they're taking a look at a specific item in the contract, in the MOA, and saying, well, why wasn't that language firmer? That's not how negotiations work. We were negotiating the entirety of the MOA. And I'm not getting into details about what one side said and the other side said, but you have to understand that the entire thing was negotiated. So you can't just say, well, that should have been firmer, and so we go back to the table and say, no, we're definitely, there's give and take for everything.
Right. It's a compromise.
It's a compromise. And I got to tell you, after the last, contract negotiation and how that went, we worked very well together. All three pieces of the negotiating team: the administration, the school committee, and the HFT. And I think that's very important.
The one thing our world lacks today is collaboration, and to see the school committee, the administration, the union on a video yesterday with Mary says a lot, right? Goes a long way. And that doesn't mean, hey, we're in cahoots and we're figuring this out. No, I mean, every party has their needs, right? And we came together and said, this is the best path forward. So when there says a weaker contract is ahead of us, yeah, I don't know what weaker look like, but this is the strongest we're going to get.
I don't know how. I mean, we met 14 times. This was, no one was caving. This was 14 times over 28 hours, probably over even more than that. We, the negotiating team met in strategy sessions a countless amount of times. A lot of energy went into this, and a lot of time, and we tried all different things. We talked about all different things.
I mean, again, I want to hark back to the buses and Ms. Raffi's statement about asking, the reducing 3 buses down to 2 when you don't have a clear plan. To be clear, I mean, we worked closely with Mr. Boudet, who's the Assistant Superintendent of Operations and Finance. He has decades of experience working with our busing companies. This number didn't, we didn't just scribble down a number. I mean, we worked closely with him on these pieces. So I am confident, given, the amount of months that we would have, and again, we'll have answers on September 10th, but we then have, a full year before this change takes place. So.
Is there anything in there factually? I know you don't want to get into the political realm, but was there anything factually in there that anyone in the administration would like to clear up if you think that it should be?
I think I'll just echo, for me, the biggest piece, if we're really trying to improve teaching and learning, which we've spent an exorbitant amount of time. I spoke when we were with Mary Greendale the other day about the investment that we've done in our children's future with our new curricular resources, which, by the way, I will repeat, our math resources have not been reviewed as a district and purchased as a district since 2015 or prior to. We are way behind in getting new curricular resources, and you can't really teach the Mass State standards with resources that are 10 years old because the curriculum has changed at the state level. So this is a huge investment in our students. By having all these resources, we're going to spend a ton of time this year training our teachers, not only on the new math resources, but how to differentiate the learning. And we also reorganized our curriculum roles so that we have now full-time STEM and STEM and humanities interventionist curriculum roles in all buildings. Dr. Menard has been meeting with them the past few days and tomorrow again, and they are so excited about working together to align our work. We've done everything as an administrative team that we said we were going to do with our strategic plan. We are moving in the right direction, and now we are at a pivotal time where this change is so necessary. To me, that additional, I know people think it's not a big deal. As an educator myself, to have 10 to 15 minutes a day of additional instructional time. We heard repeatedly when we made the changes in elementary last year, we knew we weren't teaching science enough in our elementary schools, and our students, they deserve that. We need to be more competitive with STEM for all students. We weren't as competitive. When I taught elementary, I taught science quite a bit more to my students than I was seeing here. So we invested that extra time into our schedules, and the teachers are telling us it's not enough time. We cannot teach all the standards. So we heard that. And if we want our teachers to teach more and work more, because it is more planning time, we do have to invest in that. So I feel like all of this is an investment in students, and I will stand behind, to me, as an educator, that 10 to 15 minutes makes a huge difference over time for our students and will make a difference.
These statements seem to minimize the issue of morale, or at least the connection between morale and salaries. But I can tell you that I have left jobs, for better pay, and I know teachers do as well. So I have a question for the administration, I guess. Do you conduct exit interviews, and are teachers leaving for higher pay?
We do conduct when people are willing to. It varies.
Mm-hmm.
We have some people that have said that. We actually had someone that is leaving right now that already started the school year because they're getting more pay in another district. But to me, honestly, when I look at that, I said this on Mary Greendale's, so it's not something you wouldn't have heard from me saying before. I started that we were in mediation for a contract when I entered in 2020. We spent 2 years in mediation. Then we got the contract settled. We had a retroactive salary for our teachers. So we had a year off. So this is my 5th year. 3 out of 4 almost full years of my time here were in negotiations and mediation. And I've had people say, Dr. Cusker, it's your job to fix the morale. Morale does not get fixed top down, but the frustration that people were feeling with those unsettled contracts, people did leave because of that. They have said that they left because of the uncertainty at different times. So that there was a lot of factors that went into that, and some people just left because they have found jobs closer to home. You are seeing it's more transient. People are leaving when they never did before. If you were on top step, you pretty much stayed put. So there's a lot of changes that COVID also brought, so I don't want to say it's all of that. But let's face it, I don't think anyone could say that if 3 out of 4 years of negotiating contracts or in mediation did not have a negative impact on morale.
And I think, Joe, I don't necessarily think it's the COLA specifically that's going to impact morale, whether it's one COLA or the other. It's going to be not having a settled contract and the uncertainty that's going to go on there, and then the difficult position where we will be in financially when negotiating, when going back to the negotiating table. And so that to me is where the real morale is going to be impacted, not because not the specific COLA one way or the other.
I think it'd be helpful to share, so obviously teachers leaving, we know are not helpful to our students, but how does that impact our students?
Yeah, and if you listen, as you said, you probably listened to me talk a little bit this with Mary Greendale as well. I just mentioned a few minutes ago how we're investing a ton of time, energy, resources, which we should. It's well overdue. We were not keeping up. We were not aligning our curriculum the way we should have. We've been working really hard on that the last few years. So all this training that we're doing this year, and those teachers leave, and now who does all that training again?
7 years, right?
I'm sorry?
It was quoted 7 years to get to a teacher to where they're really
Well, they usually say by 3 years you feel comfortable, and I would say it's 3 to 5 before you start really honing and feeling good about your skills. Some people will say 7. It really is that 3 to 5 years before you start settling in, but I'm just thinking of everybody in the district has brand new math curricula. We have Eureka Math and Reveal Math. And now every single teacher is going to be spending, that teaches math, will have all of this professional development this year. What happens next year if some of those teachers leave because they feel uncertain? Or what if this whole year we go with another unsettled contract? That would be my 4 out of 5 years. That's almost unheard of. I can't fix the morale unless we get support from the community as well. It is that uncertainty, and I know if I were a teacher, I would be worried about that as well. I hired new teachers this summer, and one of the things I was saying to them, this is your salary that I'm telling you, this is what you get in your letter. I hope it will be 4% higher, and that would be this if that happens, but I can't promise you that. So they took a chance, and they came to Holliston. We got some really amazing teachers joining us, and I hope they don't leave this year if we don't give them what they thought they were hoping they would get, because I was very clear, I don't know what the contract's going to be. We have an override scheduled for September 10th.
And that's the facts, right? That's not fear mongering, that's the facts.
Right.
No, and I can't tell you what kind of layoffs, but I'm very worried because I know where our budget is. We have been very frugal. So any salary increase for teachers, regardless of if we get those instructional minutes back, will likely lead to layoffs at the end of the year. And if that takes a full year to get there, I can't lay off mid-cycle. We would likely end up, the layoffs would happen the following year. But I can't predict all of that, but I'm very worried about what could happen to Holliston if we don't move forward.
So the last thing I want to say, unless other people have things, is that I am pleading with the community, if people are putting out there facts, especially anonymous postings of facts, please do not quote that or reiterate that to other people without coming to us and asking us if it's true or not. There's so much misinformation that's being bandied about out there that it frustrates me to no end, because we will give you the truth. We're volunteers. We're your neighbors and your friends. We're not here. There's zero benefit to me personally or to anyone here from doing this. We're all doing this because we want to make our schools and our town better.
And just to settle in facts, the school committee will pay the higher taxes as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, like there's,
yes.
we're signing up for it.
Some much more than the average. Seriously, we are here to try to do what we think is best for the school district, and this is what we think is best for the school district. And if you see something online and someone's stating it's fact, and especially as an anonymous, poster, just shoot us a quick email. Hey, is that right? And we can help clear that up if need be. Okay.
Jumping to new business?
Let's see here. We're running a little behind.
Right, can I just suggest, so we talked about, Sarah, you weren't here when you were first talking about, you have a communication subcommittee meeting upcoming, right?
Yes.
So maybe we can just kind of include some of this more and
Yep.
push out, a revised FAQ.
Yep.
And I think you could insert the HCAT video as well.
Sure.
We
Yeah.
can send out a,
Yeah.
So, what would you like to go to? I apologize. I apologize for that.
So thank you to our administrators in the high school. I want to introduce our newest assistant principal, Nancy Clough, who joined us at our retreat this summer, and we're so excited to add her to our team. I'd like Mr. List or Nancy to tell us a little bit about her entry to Holliston, and then they're going to present the changes that are proposed changes to the handbook that you would vote on tonight.
Hi, thanks for having me. I am coming to you all from Worcester, that's where I live. And I've been an educator for about 10 years and started my career in a special education classroom, working as a paraprofessional, and then I moved into teaching world history, which was my favorite thing to do. I taught world history all levels, AP, honors, everything. I was the only world history teacher in my district, and I worked my way into kind of finding leadership roles that sort of came to me until I really decided that was where I wanted to go. I have education in educational leadership and completed a degree in that, and very, very, very happy to be here at Holliston. It's been an incredible start, and I'm just really happy to be here and feeling very positive about the school year and how things started. So thank you.
Welcome.
Can I just add one thing? I think one of the things that I've talked about with our administrative team, how excited we are that now Ron has brought us a lot of experience in math, and he's been really critical with our math curriculum review, working with Joni and our high school teachers, and Nancy with her humanities/social studies background. The fact that they can now support the 2 new intervention roles at the high school, I really just feel this solid team we've created here. I'm really excited for it, and welcome again, Nancy.
Thank you.
I also want to give a chance for Ron to introduce himself, because last year we were outside at the football game during introduction, and so the new school committee members here as well.
I think it was pretty windy, too.
And it was pretty windy, so that's what we give Ron actually a chance. It's been here a year, but just to introduce himself to everybody here, to the community.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Ron Taylor, assistant principal, year 2 here. As Dr. Kuska was saying, I was in the math classroom not all that long ago. It was 19 years in the math classroom, 6 of which were in the department head role. This is the start of my 4th year as an assistant principal, my 2nd here. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm really excited about this team and the vision that we have with our central office staff and the meetings and the collaboration that takes place. And I got to tell you, it's fun sitting here as well. It's awfully tough to sit here and not speak. I was ready to talk about a few of the changes we've made to the handbook, and I had my ideas, and now my brain is all over the place. I have so many thoughts on so many things. Only because I was a teacher not all that long ago, so I was in that world, and that also excites me, that I feel like I can relate to the teachers having been there not all that long ago. And we're really a team, not just this team, but with our teachers as well. We really want to build a culture where we're in this for the kids, and Holliston's pretty special with the relationships the teachers build with their students, the paraprofessionals, our custodial staff, our front office staff. Everyone is in it for the kids, and that just brings me joy coming to school every day.
Welcome to your second year.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry to throw you off from your thought process.
And welcome Mr. List to his second year.
And welcome Mr. List to his second year. Though he's been before us many
Yes.
times.
Many times.
Yep. And hopefully many more.
That's fine. I had a good time. We were talking about over here, we learn a lot.
Good.
Sure.
Always learning. Lifelong learning. So do you want to get to the handbook?
Yeah, I just wanted to say before we got started that the policy subcommittee met last night with Mr. List and Dr. Cuska to review over these so that we could, we asked some questions and made a couple of minor adjustments really to what he
And you can vote a
suggested.
recommendation?
And we supported it and voted to support moving forward with it to all of you, so.
Did you make any changes and recommend changes?
They were minor. Not really. I mean, did you guys?
I had a couple of typos
that were in there, and some clarification.
I can share.
Yeah, he's going to give the highlights.
Yeah, I
so.
can give the highlights and
Yeah.
share where I clarified some, so there were some questions and I was able to clarify some language.
Yeah, please give the highlights. It's a 17-page document.
Yeah.
So,
We can do it. I'm actually going to let Ron and then Nancy start, because Ron did a lot of work on the first thing, the accelerated core study, and then Nancy, in terms of the DSP, I'm going to let them start, because there was a lot of work they did, and I want to give them credit for it.
So when students want to accelerate their course of study, we have exciting, engaging conversations around it. Anytime a student comes to your office and says, I'm interested in learning more at a faster pace, it's an exciting conversation. In the past, in the handbook, we asked the students come to us and ask us for approval, share with us the course that they'd like to take. It had to be NEASC accredited, and there was a fee that was attached to it that they'd have to pay. What we realized is that it wasn't really all that equitable of an experience for our students. Some students were able to pay the fee to take a course, others maybe not. And we wanted to make sure that everyone was able to take advantage of these opportunities. We live in this information age where information's coming at you fast and furious, and you can find it wherever you want it. And mathematics is one of those places where students can find the information they want and learn it on their own through Khan Academy, or there's a million different avenues that you can find it. Some students love to self-study, some students work in groups, some students work with teachers during DSB, and we're finding that more and more students are sitting in classes on day one where they've already pre-studied and pre-learned half or more of that material, and we want to keep them engaged and not bore them when they're in classes. So I had a wonderful conversation with a student at the start of the year last year. He came and he said, I'm signed up to take pre-calculus, but I already know pre-calculus. I've done the studying on my own. It would be, in a very nice way, he said, it would be a waste of my time. He had not taken a NEASC accredited course. It seemed unfair for us to say, hey, in the handbook, this is what it says. You need to follow through and do these things. So we found a way to assess his skills so that he was able to demonstrate his knowledge to us. And he turned out to be one of the top BC calculus students last year. He did skip pre-calculus, went into BC calculus, dominated it, and his love of learning in school only grew through that experience. So we're really harnessing that now, and we've shared with families last year that if they'd like to do this, we're not putting pressure on people to do this, but if you'd like to pursue this avenue, you certainly can, and we're using IXL to help us with this. Mr. Tivnan, our math department leader at the high school, has aligned our standards with our new curriculum using IXL, and we're putting together comprehensive assessments that really make sure that students don't have gaps in their learning along the way. I'll try to keep this a little bit shorter than I'm going here. Students have to earn an 85% on the assessment to move forward. With that said, if they earned an 84 and we could identify that there was just one particular aspect of their learning where there was a gap, we might provide them with resources and a plan and say, come see this teacher or myself, during DSB, and we'll make sure that you close this gap, and we want you to move forward. So there's a lot of fun conversations taking place with students about their learning and their growth and what their goals are, and it's exciting to help be a part of that process.
Okay.
I have just one quick question on it.
Sure.
And thank you for all of that. And I love that you were able to work through that last year, too. Under eligibility and examination, it says exams will be offered in July and August. And I found that a little stringent, especially in light of the fact that we have block scheduling, where we have kids that you might almost have to jump into that Algebra 2 in the fall semester, find out you're doing really well, and you're already grasping that pre-calc class. So why not offer that opportunity July, August, November, December, like twice a year, right? And maybe not even, at least as long as we still have block scheduling, because I do think there's kids, we do things a little differently here in Holliston with the block scheduling. So I think there's an additional opportunity to maybe move kids.
One of the problems that we face is, and even with block scheduling, is that one of the caveats to this is if there's room in the class.
Right.
So even in August, we're looking at terms 3 and 4. Mm-hmm. And so in theory, we can offer that test whenever. It's just much easier I would hate for a kid to plan on taking a test in November and then us knowing ahead of time, there's really no space in this class. Or it doesn't, or more likely it doesn't work in their schedule versus not space is more likely to be the issue. We can offer it all throughout the year. And the other issues that arise are also like a kid takes it in November, they have 2 months of class left. Have they then passed out of the rest of that class? Are they done with that class? They just become a lot of sort of moving pieces with it. So that's why we kind of put here. And most of the kids are taking, a lot of the kids are doing the Russian School of Math throughout the year. And so they're on their pathway, and it kind of aligns with the school year for a lot of the kids, so that they're taking their courses throughout the year. They then have the summer, that's when they're taking this test. And then, it could be offered, it just adds a layer that I'm not sure that would have the outcome that we necessarily would want. But
so, forgive me, I have not studied the handbook before this all that much. It's not part of my reading. But is
just saying that you sign every year that you do.
Yeah. Start reading.
Right.
right? No,
just making sure you're aware.
I sign many things that I don't actually read.
Off the record.
No, nothing officially. Well, anyway, but is it implied within the handbook that this is at administration discretion for exceptions? So is it worth adding offered in July and August, or at counselors or administrators?
Yeah, we can add that.
Space.
Yeah, we can add that. Yeah,
discretion, just so that
I will say is valid that if we've already done the schedule for the entire year for in August for
It
the
worked out
students.
last year.
I will say on opening day, I was out here doing bus duty, and I saw Mr. Taylor running to the office and was asking for a calculator or something, and I said, "What's going on?" And a student was taking it on opening day, correct?
But it's August, so.
And so
Yeah.
initially, we had set a date by August 15th. Well, and then students reached out and said, I'm out of the country. And, and sure. What I love is that just because it's in writing and it says something, we're always going to do what's right. It's a guideline, and just because it was done a certain way in the past doesn't mean that we have to do it this way, because it always worked before. We're always engaging in conversations, and when someone shares an idea, it oftentimes makes us think, and if it works, we'll do it.
But many times we've heard from people is sort of, I didn't know that could be done, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And many times it's because people like me haven't actually read the document,
Mm-hmm.
but other times it's because the document didn't actually say something that is actually done, but is not actually written there. I own my faults, okay? I mean,
Read your documents, they need to.
exactly, yes.
No, I think we can add that language in there.
Right. Because again, it's equitable, making sure everyone understands that this is something that they can at least seek, and it doesn't mean they're going to get it, but they can at least ask for it. And you guys can set up a whole process for how you want to deal with it, and it makes most sense for you, so people aren't just coming to your office every day asking for these
And
things.
just for complete transparency, I think it was 16 kids took exams and 10 are
It was either 9 or 10.
9 or 10, yeah. Accelerated through, and I think the benefit of the exam, and as I said, because we're using IXL, it's like straight out of the standards. We're able to look at the work in person, that the students who didn't pass could clearly see where those gaps were, because IXL, it's really cool if you haven't played with it, but can show you all of that information.
How are we encouraging kids to get involved with that? Right? I think there are gifted students out there that either know about it or don't know about it, so communication and making sure people are aware that it's out there. Are we encouraging anyone, or our students, to take advantage of this?
So
that are
of this opportunity?
Yeah.
I mean, so it's very, very public. Like, I sent out to families this information, and, we share all of this, and we have more and more students who are doing a lot of individualized work outside of school. We have a group of students who are doing the open courses MIT multivariable calculus course this year because they've accelerated through. Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to take that class for my course, so.
We were just talking with Mr. Tivnan about how exciting it could be in a year or two if we enough students accelerate beyond what we currently offer. We might have a teacher teaching multivariate calculus here.
And I think that speaks to the innovation side of what Holliston's willing to do and what our teachers are willing to do. Like this year, we have our own organic chemistry class, which you don't see at high schools ever. We have 24 students taking organic chemistry. And I sat in that class and did not understand a word they were saying. So it was tough yesterday. But no, I mean, I think that we want to see these opportunities, and our staff and our teachers are really engaged in supporting kids in doing it. So we're hopeful that we can expand some of these opportunities for kids.
For the record, I enjoyed organic chemistry, but in college. So the fact that we've got high school students taking it is quite impressive.
Yeah.
The next thing on the list is the directed study block. This won't probably take as much time. It's a little bit more straightforward. As many of you probably know, the purpose of directed study is to help support students. And one of the things that I love about Holliston that brought me here is that we really think about the whole student. And this is a testament to that, because it allows the student to sort of think about what they're doing throughout the day, what they need to support themselves in learning, whether that be extra help from a teacher, missed assignments, maybe they're trying to pass an exam that we're offering, or maybe they just need some time to help manage their own stress. So that's all part of this program, that they can choose to do those different things. What you'll see that's different here is the suggestions of what should be happening during that time, and the list of things that students, can access. So for example, it gives a little bit more information about like passing time between second block and the start of DSB. It lets kids know that they can have breakfast at that time, and then asking students to choose a place to be and use their time as they need it in that place. If there's anything else you want to add?
No, I think the other piece here is we want to make sure that kids had access to breakfast, and that time wasn't spent solely as where they are in DSB, and give students the opportunity to be with any one of their teachers in their DSB block. So.
Okay.
The next one is the dual enrollment. A lot of this is cleaning up language here. Basically, hoping to encourage, we'd love to encourage students to take advantage of dual enrollment programs. Right now, we're not a partner institution with a dual enrollment program, so students do have to pay the cost associated with that. There are different partnerships that exist for dual enrollment. It also clarified how the credit system would work within it. So you're in a semester class, it's a semester credit. It was clarifying that piece. There was also language in here that talked about dual enrollment and early graduation, but we cleared that language up later to remove that. And also added a language just to make sure people are aware that if they're in a full-time dual enrollment program, that they are still eligible to participate in after-school activities. The next piece is the advanced placement courses. Here we added a component that we are encouraging students to take the advanced placement exam. I know that we have talked about making that a requirement here. I think one of the things that with our current schedule, the way it is, you have students who might finish a class a couple of months before the exam itself. And so right now it didn't feel appropriate to, make that recommendation, or may say you have to take this exam when our structures are not necessarily set up to support the student who's going to take that exam. So we just added that language of encouraging students, strongly encouraging them to take it for the time being. Any questions on that one? Attendance, along with the other schools, we looked a lot at our attendance over the last year and the previous years, and this policy is really in place to encourage families and students to be in school, because that's where, obviously we believe they should be. And we clarified a lot of the language just around what is considered an excused and unexcused absence, because we're told clearly by the state what an unexcused or excused absence is. And what we were doing at the high school was we were kind of lumping everything into verified absences, which wasn't very clear as to what that is. That could be like the family's on vacation for 2 weeks, but it also could be the kid is hospitalized. Everything was just verified. And so there wasn't great clarity in terms of what was excused, what wasn't. Also, what happens in here with these absences is it allows us, it really works with that multi-tiered systems of support, right? What this does is gives us some checks and time where we can reach out to families. So when we create these situations where a student might lose credit, it seems like, oh, that seems very harsh, but what that does is sets a standard for us to be able internally, for our assistant principals and our intervention teams and our counselors to be able to reach out to families and students who might be missing a lot of time in classes. It's aligned with basically with the chronic absenteeism numbers for the credit attendance, sort of like for a 45-day class, a term-long class, over 5 absences, they would lose credit. And as I said, our goal is not to take away credit from any student, but it's really to have an intervention prior to that needing to happen. The other part is if a student does lose credit for this, it doesn't impact their grades. The credit is specifically tied to attendance, right? Because what would be the point of attending class anymore if you lost credit for that class? The student still gets the grade for the class. It's that internal credit counting that we would say. So the student, and in our schedule and in most high school schedules, no matter what the structure is, students have plenty of credits to be able to make up. Most of our students graduate well beyond the required credits that are necessary to graduate. And they do have means within this to make up credits. So let's say they did lose credits, they do have a mechanism in here to be able to make up credits by showing that they're coming to school regularly. Yes?
There's just one piece that I feel like could be clarified, and that is you say medical and then documented, right? But that's not solely a physician's note, right? It's up to 3 days or 5 days that you, so I don't want families to think, my kid just has a bad cold and a fever, so I'm doing the right thing by keeping them home, but that doesn't mean they have to go incur their $50 copay and get a doctor's note,
I
right?
can clarify that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the other piece is here, and Ron talked about this before, was that clarity of we're not we know that obviously there are costs that are incurred by going to the doctor, and that not all families can do that, and so, we reach out to families who are absent, to figure out what's going on, and we're not docking, when we know that information, we have the ability to excuse an absence. What we're really trying to cut down on here is students is skipping of classes, those problematic pieces, and again, also where we can intervene, where we can recognize that there's an issue using different data points. All right, that's the longest one here. So the tardy policy was just thanks to Dan, we're now able to sort of push kids through more quickly through a line which is why we had to change the policy. There was this policy before that kind of had this like weird buffer where school started at 8:20 because it said like, oh, between 8:10 and 8:20 show up and then you're kind of tardy but you're on time. When I was looking back, it was added during COVID, and so it was never just changed back to really account for the actual school start time. But as I said, Dan has also given us a system in the main office where kids can punch in their IDs, prints out a pass, take it and go. And so, we didn't have long lines of kids out the door into doing this. But this is really actually just going back to a pre-COVID policy that existed within the handbook. I would say the electronic devices rule here is already started in our classrooms. We have our students putting their devices in a holder on pockets when they enter the classroom. They're those in the AirPods, and they don't take them out until the bell rings. It's pretty. I mean, I know it's laid out here is a lot, but that's the basic premise of what the policy is. And then the consequences for students violating that policy, and then also just making sure that we were very clear about the recording of staff being not allowed in the building. The parking lot, we ran into an issue last year where we had over 275 requests for about 235 spots. And so just wanted to make it clear that we were going to give seniors access. We're going to number all the spots. People were going to get parking passes with those permits with those numbers, and then we were going to go seniors, then juniors for spots. Early graduation was a split. Cynthia, I don't remember the language. It wasn't a school committee policy. It was a.
Well, it's a procedure. You have to
Sorry, yes, I have to change that.
We'll have to do that later.
Yeah, it's a school committee procedure, and this just took it and put it into our handbook, lowered the requirements of the GPA, and also brought in more involvement with the school counselor, myself, and the final say being made by the assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction.
Is it standard in most districts that there's not an appeal process to the superintendent or the school committee?
For early graduation? Yeah. I'm going to be honest, 99% I've never seen it denied anywhere, because a kid coming forward with early graduation, there's usually something there. And it comes out to maybe a kid every few years that's doing this. But as I said, I don't think I've ever seen. I mean, I can add an appeal to the superintendent if I can get what you're saying.
It was weird that there was a school committee, like the first stop was the school committee for
yeah.
That was definitely very
I
weird.
think it should have been with us involved at all.
Right, but it sort of, most things are appealable at least to,
I'll add a line that it's appealable to the superintendent. That's easy enough.
Just for context, we've done this, I think, 4 times since I've been in the committee.
Yeah, no, it's not huge, it's a huge deal, each individual one, but it's not
Yeah.
Right.
And they were all approved, by the way, every one of them, without question.
Can I have one question that I probably should have noticed earlier? Does the changes to the excused absences and tardies and all of that, does it align with the changes at the state level and the stuff that we put into Power School as well?
So it aligns with state rules around attendance, and also aligns, like we're working with Jody Renee to align them to what Power School has. We've also worked with Open Architects to make sure that it is pulling the correct information for both our tardies and our absences, because we looked at it, we noticed that there were issues with what it was pulling and that information and what we were getting out of it, because everything was sort of lumped under this one title, so it wasn't really great information that we could use to understand why our students were out of school.
Just to chime in, why I'm chiming in is I think when we initially made the migration over to Power School, there were constraints with how we had to label it. Unexcused was one of the terms we were not able to use. In that, as far as our selection board, as far as the way attendance was being pulled to the state, that may have, or Renee may have found an adjustment to that, but I know that, I don't know, are we in alignment with the other buildings as far as how we're pulling our attendance data for state reporting?
So I had to find that out. I don't know, but I do know that we can have it unexcused now. So, but I don't know the answer to that. I can ask the other principals if that. Well, I guess Jody or Renee would be the one to know how it pulls comparatively, right? Dan, she would be.
Yeah, we can see the other buildings and then compare it to high school. Sure.
Yeah, I just want to double check on that because I don't want us to have to come back later with that one piece.
No, that makes sense.
So
can we approve?
as amended and with the potential for that one change?
You want to just hold that one?
I can hold that one, yeah.
Because then I think what you could do is you could come back, because you'd have to send out, if there was another change later, you'd have to just notify all parents at that time.
Yep, that's fine.
Thank you.
But do we want to come back to us for an additional vote, or?
No.
If there's some.
Only if there's a
change.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the high school handbook as amended as discussed at this meeting.
Moved by Cynthia.
Second by Sarah.
All in favor?
Thank you for all that hard work.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Thank you, it was a lot.
I'll take the rest. Thank you.
What was that? Yes, this was a vote. Lisa watching at home. Let's see.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Where would you?
We should go back to the presentation of
Okay.
data and assessment, unless
Sure.
you wanted to table something else.
No, it's
We're way behind.
we're off the chart, but we don't have anything we don't have executive session afterwards. That's
Joe has a day off tomorrow, so.
all right. So we're going to go to 1, right?
That's right.
Data and assessments.
Data and assessment
We're out of here at
ranking. So,
10.
so as a follow-up to the presentation that the administration did in December, there were some recommendations. I think we asked Dr. Kuska and her team to update and maybe include some recommendations and take it away.
Sure. So last December, if you remember, we had presented at length, Joni Menard and Dan and I, on data and assessment and how that might impact school rankings. As we shared then, school rankings is very temperamental and subjective, and while people look at that and its importance, to me it's about what is the quality education that we're giving to our students, and we really, that alignment that I've talked about, the curricular resources, all of that is really critical. You'll see Dan talk about some of the changes we've seen so far, but I will say the data that we put together last year, we don't have a lot of data that's changed since then. So we'll end up coming back at a later date, because what will happen is when we present our goals in October with the principals, you'll see that they'll have and we don't have the MCAS data to share right now. Most of our rankings we've had no updates to since that December date. So I don't have a lot of changes to share with you, but we'll go over what we can talk about now, and then at a later date we can come back with some of the data that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks and months. I'll pass it off to you, Dan.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Happy to be back with you. And the second version of this presentation. So this is our agenda. We're going to look at the comparison districts, which is similar to what Dan Alford presented with the salaries. So we looked at the Metro West area. And we're going to look at U.S. News is the only ranking we have for 2024. So we got a chance to take a deep dive into that ranking, and we'll share the details of that. And then we're going to share some of our AP data. I'm glad Mr. List is here staying with us so he can maybe speak to some of that. We'll talk about the action steps we took based on the recommendations last year. And last but not least is the data dashboard. We're going to show you a preview of the data dashboard we purchased thanks to Mr. Renee and his clever budgeting, I guess, to pull that off. So. All right, so these are the 8 districts we've chosen, again, based on proximity, so no shockers there. All right, a lot of information here. I try to avoid these slides, so I'll just break it down. So this is U.S. News. 30% is the College Readiness Index, which we're going to spend time on. And then 10%, 20% is typical things for rankings. But what's interesting, if you stay on this for a minute, last year, this is what we found for U.S. News. It just said 12th graders for the 30% who took and passed at least one AP or IB exam. And then passing is worth 3 times more than just taking. So to Mr. List's point, just asking kids to take it doesn't have as much weight as the kids passing the test. If you go to the next slide, we'll talk about.
Sorry, there's just a delay.
Just not.
It didn't.
Can you go? Okay.
But,
Here we go.
but to be clear, the more kids that take an AP exam, the higher the probability that you have a higher percentage of kids who pass the AP exam, right? More shots on goal, if you will.
Correct. But if they're both high, it's all good because it's a 30% weight, so you have high takers, you rate higher probability, so it's all good to raise and increase the number of takers.
So in theory, right, like, so a school like Holliston doesn't have very many guardrails up to their AP courses. So there are other schools in our area that like you have to have an 85, a 90, a 95. You have to have a recommendation. You're not allowed to override into AP classes depending on the school district. So when you're saying more and more, it's not necessarily the case.
No, what I'm saying is if a student who wouldn't have normally taken the AP exam, but is in an AP class, took the exam, got a 2, right? Mm-hmm. That still helps the rate, the ranking, because you're increasing the percent that took the, right? But that student taking the exam has the potential to score through a pass where, so my point is you still want.
Well, no, we still want lots of kids to take APs, right? If we're college readiness, then we want like all of our kids hopefully taking some sort of college readiness course if they're going. That's right.
But in prepping for that and having a class that might be 2 terms or 3 terms, they've taken a number of sample tests, and if a kid is consistently scoring at a 1 or a 2, they may not be asking their family to spend $100 on a test that they're going to get a 1 or a 2, whether they're going to spend hours studying for it. It also takes away time that they might otherwise devote to something they feel more successful at, that they are, hitting it at a 3 or a 4 or 5. So I think that might be part of what drives their choice. And it might be actually interesting to survey students on why they choose not to take them.
Most of our students at this point are taking them because so if you think about a 12th grader, which they're talking about, not necessarily an 11th grader, one, they're into college. Mm-hmm. They know what credit, some colleges count AP, mm-hmm. some don't now. Right. Some take a 3. Some take a 4, some don't take it depending on your major. So,
And many of them limit it, like they'll only take 1 humanities or 1 or 2 math. So if they've already hit that as a sophomore or junior, then there's no incentive for them to do it again as a senior.
Right, yeah. So there's a lot of different variables that exist that, in theory, yes, more and more. I'd love, as I said, I'd love for lots of kids to take AP, and there are APs that we could offer that are actually more accessible APs that we should be looking at in these conversations. I think just looking at it in terms of they don't take into account any of these variables. They just look at the number take, number pass, and then weight it 3 times more if you pass.
Right.
And we talked a lot about that last year. Like, there was a big shift in 2017 when Holliston did say we're going to be looking at project-based learning and not really looking at data. We did shift away from looking at curricular in the same way. I've always said since I've been here, I think there's that need for the balance. When you switch from one shift to the pendulum or the other, that neither is good, right? You want it to be somewhat balanced so that you're looking at data, you're using it to form decision-making, And then if you're teaching to the standards and you're actually using the resources that will align with those standards, you're more likely to start seeing improvements as well. We're already seeing some of that improvement in a lot of the data sources we're looking at.
Well, US News only looks at the AP. It's the state data does report on the students that are completing advanced coursework, regardless of whether they're taking the AP or not.
But 40% of their ranking is related to the AP, which to me seems like an excessive.
Right.
But it also seems like I don't know what people think too. Can we ask the administrators to take a hard look, do some surveys, and maybe see if there's a recommendation to come back? I think that it's not an overly excessive ask to ask seniors who are taking AP exams to take at least one AP test.
And I think that was what we had talked about doing. The concern is that the timing of our courses where we're locked out. We've talked before about how sometimes a student can take math in the fall, no math in the spring, no math in the next fall. It could be a full year gap between their learning, and that's where our schedule has been so lacking and why we need to be
Well, maybe something that we need to postpone until we know if we're changing.
That's why I asked them to put the language of encourage, because I really do want to encourage that, and the teachers should be encouraging as well, and I think that's something that Mr. List has been asking the teachers to make sure that they do stress that you're taking this, we're teaching it, we do want you to take the test. But right now, until the schedule piece gets resolved, it would be an unfair inequity to have all students take at least one.
Because to me, it seems like there's a lot of things that we can do to improve rankings that don't improve educational outcomes because you change how you're teaching to the test, or you're trying to, and we don't necessarily want to change our educational philosophy. The AP one seems like one of those low-hanging fruit pieces to some degree, where you just sort of, you're not gaming the system, but you're somewhat gaming the system.
Well, it's a big weighting, right?
Right.
What are we doing for the students that are on the cusp? So, like, yes, if they get one test, but on the practice test, it's probably not going to work out. But those that are on the cusp, like, are we working with those students to get them to a passing?
So the AP is an interesting test because there is a ton of content, but then ultimately you're teaching them how to answer the test in the way that the AP graders or the AP wants you to take it. So, for example, we're sending one of our teachers at the end of the school year to be a grader, because then she will then be working with other graders grading these tests, and we'll be able to come back and support our students in how to then write the essays to get better grades.
Right, but to be clear, this is an honors class. This is the AP class, so in some ways that's sort of what it is.
I'm just saying, like, when we're talking about...
No, that's a great answer, though.
So, so we're working on it.
Back to gaming, but we're educating ourselves, like, how are we going to succeed on the test?
So that's what we're doing, yes.
Don't bring it back and help the students.
Improve educational outcomes and improve rankings, right? That's really what we want.
But an AP class may be that you actually teach the AP class to the test, but the rest of our educational philosophy is not teaching to the test.
That's why we take AP.
Exactly. So like, I don't see that change. Yeah, I think we're all saying.
Yeah. Mr. List, are you having any, do you expect to have conversations in the next year about other AP class opportunities? Because you said something interesting, which is there are many other courses that are out there that we don't offer yet, and that...
Right, so we have to look at it as a values-based thing as a district and understand why we would then offer the APs, and then look at how we would then support students. There are great classes that AP offers, such as like AP research, right? That can be done by any student. AP Human Geography is very accessible. They now are offering AP Pre-Calc, which makes no sense. But anyway, well, they get paid per test. But I think it has to do with the value. It's a values-based thing that we have to look at as a school, see what aligns with what our values are as educators, what our values are as a school. And as I said, like, there's no AP Organic Chemistry, but we're offering a college-level Organic Chemistry class. So our students are getting an amazing opportunity they don't get elsewhere, and there is no test that they can take that's going to shine a light on that. But I can promise you that when a college sees that our kids are taking organic chemistry, that's
the balance we want to strike.
And that's what we have to sort of look at as our educational values within this, and marrying that to sort of this piece of the AP. So.
Dan?
Yes, so one thing we learned this year is this is a 2021-22 data, so the 2024 ranking is based on 21-22 data.
So just to, when we were showing you last December the data from multiple years, most of the data that we're presenting as 23, 22, 21 actually predates my time in the district in some of us. So I mean, that's where it's also misleading. It's going back more years.
They also don't tell us so on other slides, on other pieces of their data, they'll say, sometimes they'll pull from 22, 23 or 2021. So you don't actually know, they don't tell you though what year they're pulling from.
So it's a tricky shell game.
Yeah. But given this is though
paying money
3
to
years
US
behind,
News?
and to your point, it may shift years. Could we look at where we've fallen like next year based on 3 years ago?
So on the website, the presentation we did in December goes back how many years? Is it 10 years? I can't remember. We went back as far as we could. We pulled as many years as we could on each data source, but it was the first time we've gathered it, so we may not have had access to all of it, but we did look at multiple years, and you can see the trends. And it's very clear that when we started making that shift in 2017, we were at 14%, I think, in U.S. News and World Report in 2016 or 17, and we did see a decline. And we are starting to see, with all the data, it's starting to move upwards, which is what we'd expect now that we've put a concerted effort into really aligning the curriculum. But these are very specific data sources.
And Frank, to your point, there's a slide later that will show you this year's data, and we can kind of predict 2 years from now what our ranks might be. So
Yeah, not for sure. On the record.
Can we use to the lottery, too?
All right, and I want to thank Jody Renee as our data system specialist. She helps with these slides and the graphs. So just to explain this a little bit, so we were 76 high school, we're talking about, not district, high school. 76 ranking last year, U.S. News in Massachusetts. So 23, 24, 62, which obviously lower is better.
And I asked them to flip the graph, because if you're looking at it visually, you automatically assume higher is better. In this case, it's not. A lower is better because it's a lower ranking means a lower number means you're higher ranking. So I just asked them to flip it so you'd visually have to kind of think about that.
A lot of residents miss this. Like, I don't think we talk about this enough. And again, ranking's not everything, but this is important for residents moving in town, residents in town. Look at other districts. I mean, yes, some other districts did improve significantly. Others did not improve. We had a pretty sizable improvement.
And as you mentioned, your 2023 data was better than this data that's here.
This is based off COVID data, right?
Well, for everyone.
Not for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean,
moving in the right direction.
the rankings are all flawed. It's just, but it's something that people can easily see and digest.
And that's why you'll hear us talk about the data dashboard more as we move along, because we want to look at multiple sources of data and to see how we're improving in many areas.
All right, this next slide just summarizes last year versus this year in the U.S. News rankings, so you can see where we were in every category. 57th in Boston metro area, down to 49th, which is good this year in U.S. News. Next one. And here we can again see those rankings on the left. But this scorecard is what U.S. News uses for high schools, and we are higher this year than last year. And you can see the taking one exam, passing an exam, and then the proficiencies and the other assessments. But we were higher than last year. Which
I think we had a higher percentage of how many took the APs as well,
yes.
right? Yes.
When they say math, reading, and science proficiency, is that based on the MCAS?
Yes.
So they're comparing our MCAS to other states.
But now don't forget, that was 21, 22 MCAS, and that's why it's so confusing, because it's misaligned.
Or are they using SATs or ACTs? Do we know?
No, so that's proficiency, that's based on state testing, all state testing.
Yeah, it did
All
say.
those are state testing.
Yep.
All right, here's the AP data from this past year. So we had 185 students in the 2024 graduating class. 87 of them took at least one exam. That's our 47%. And then the thing we're excited about is 77 of those 87 passed at least one exam, which is an 89% clip.
You'll see that
And again, this year, from that scorecard, we got 47% clip in passing. So if you project 2 years, that 89 should have a lot of weight.
The only thing I have to ask is we're taking less students are taking the exams, right? So we want 64 for pre-grade.
So one of the things we have to look at too is also the way our schedule is built. So because we have these 3-term APs, it limits the amount of APs that you can actually take. We also offer, again, these really neat courses that students want to take. And so students are having to make more choices now in terms of their elective classes and the APs. So if you don't take an AP, you can take many more courses.
Yeah.
So the need for a schedule change.
Mm-hmm.
And just to reiterate, passing is a 3, 4, or 5 on the exam, which is impressive to do.
So we talked about some of the shifts, as I mentioned last December when we first did this presentation. We talked about that shift happened we really went all in as a district. The district went all in for project-based learning, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. I believe and support project-based learning. However, when we made that shift, we started to shift away from looking at the data. You need to do both and then make sure you're still aligned with the standards. And we didn't look at MCAS when I started here. I started getting ready to do an MCAS presentation because I always did one every year, and I was told we don't really do that anymore. And I hear more and more now, which is I'm encouraged. I'm not all about MCAS. I'm not all about U.S. News and World Report. I mean, to me, we should be looking at all sorts of data with our students, and that's why we're going to talk about the data dashboard and what we're looking to hopefully accomplish this year. I'm not going to go into the curriculum review process too much, but those are the dates that Joni presented last year, and we're really working on making sure that we don't let a long gap in time happen like happened in the past prior to some of us arriving here. So some of these things we talked about that we were going to do and we've already done. We've already purchased a dashboard to streamline the data analysis of strengths and weaknesses. We're collecting and analyzing longitudinal programmatical data, and now that we have that, we lost some of the data from the past because we couldn't re-access it, and now we're keeping it and collecting it annually. We're able to keep it in this program. So we're doing that with all areas. The Equity Steering Committee made a ton of recommendations, and we're still looking into that. Jerry L. shared the work that he had done with the Equity Steering Committee, and then also some of the things we're going to do this year and continue that work on equity as well. The Math Study Group is going to happen. Joni and I have already sent out a message asking for volunteers. I don't know that we've had too many yet, Joni, but we're sending out a reminder, correct? So we're going to be putting that in, and we'll be coming back to you next spring with recommendations from that committee about what we may potentially do. A lot of questions about whether we are adding levels or taking away levels, but we want to make sure we're using research and data to make those decisions as a district. The PD I already talked about with all the Eureka Math and Reveal, how much work we're going to be doing this year. And then All Learners Network is the group that's coming in that's using the resources that we have, but how we can differentiate and do interventions for all students related to math and how that will transfer to other subjects as well. We're continuing our alignment for pre-K to 12 curriculum. Joni's she'll update you on the review cycles that are happening this year at a later date. I'm excited, as I mentioned earlier, all the intervention curriculum people, we had them all in our offices yesterday. They were excited, they were enthusiastic, they were so working to align the district with all that work, so it's a really nice model we put into place, and I'm looking to reap some benefits from that moving forward. The curated resources, the review cycle has to continue. The gaps continues to be worked on. Joni's going to present also, I think at the next meeting, about the curriculum work that happened over the summer, and some of that relates to this work as well. Yes. I already mentioned Eureka and Reveal, so I won't mention that again. And again, we did encourage, and I asked Mr. Liz to put that in the handbook. We are encouraging and really trying to promote that, but moving forward, I hope we do sort of set that expectation that they should at least take one in the future when our schedule better aligns to that work. So the data dashboard is going to do some great things for us.
Yes, so we launched the dashboard we talked about it a lot last spring, but we really officially launched it in June, so the administration has spent time with the dashboard. We're still finalizing the dashboard, but I wanted to show you a couple of slides from what the administrators are using, or could be using the data for. So this is called the My Student Explorer, and you can see how I selected mathematics on the left on the dashboard, and then in green is how Holliston students performed on a standard. It's hard to read the standard compared to the state average.
I can't read any of it.
So just if you can see that we're clearly, Holliston students are clearly above the state average.
Yeah, I can see that.
But I think this is where, this is what, years ago when I was an assistant principal or
We get my light spectacles, though.
the director of curriculum, we had to hand pull all this data, and then we would look at, we would analyze the standards together. This is going to pull it for us, so now we can look very quickly and say, these are the standards we're weak in, and these are what we want to help teachers focus on.
Is this grades 3 through 8? Or how does this?
This is, I'm looking at filters, this is all schools, so it would be grades 3 through 10, right, Joni?
Right, math is in 10.
3 through 10, okay.
Will there be a login that we can give to the school committee that takes out any student-specific stuff? Is there a way of bifurcating it so that, you know, there's access that only like gives you the high-level stuff that we can play around?
I think what we've talked about with Open Architect is that we may be able to have some data that is visible on our website, but I don't know if we'd be able to have specific logins, because I don't know how we're still looking into it a little bit more, but we were hoping to have similar to what DESE does with MCAS data. It's generalized data.
See all.
So that's what we're hoping, is that we can at least put access so the public can see some of the different sources.
And we're still finalizing the school-based dashboards to get the schools comfortable with their data, and then we can, you know, investigate that. I will share later, one school is pursuing, they have a really innovative idea for parents, which I'll share in a few minutes. All right, very busy slide here, but I'll try to break it down into two main things. So this is really neat. A feature of our dashboard is we can actually toggle the number of days students have missed. So there's 15 days missed. And then these scores adjust when you adjust that slider. So, and we've played with this, and obviously you can imagine what's going to happen when you do that. But these two graphs actually show it pretty clearly. So math, number of days missed, so you have 0 to 1 days, you have 77% proficient. I'm sorry, 80% proficient. But 2 to 9 days, you can see what happens, 67%, 10 to 17 days missed, 60% proficient. So you can see that clear drop with days missed and MCAS performance. That's math, that's ELA.
Are we sharing this, not to all, but to a lot of parents could be impactful? It just connects the fact that there's kids missing school and their scores are down.
Yeah. And that's what we're hoping to get to, is be able to share some of this data, and then when we meet with parents at conferences and things like that, to be able to literally have that data, to have those discussions as well.
All right, can you go to the next slide? All right, another very detailed slide, but again, just to show you, this is a STAR assessment, which is actually, we're going to hold on to that data. STAR, we're no longer using, but we're going to keep the data. And then we're introducing an IXL and an iReady dashboard, which are not quite ready yet. But similarly, you can see this toggle here. This is a 50% STAR math and how it correlates to the MCAS score. And the same thing with STAR reading. And this graph shows a correlation. You can see clearly the math is more strongly correlated than the ELA, but there's definitely that trend of STAR being a good predictor. And they told us this 3 years ago. They said when you purchase this product, you're going to see it as a reliable predictor of MCAS performance. And maybe the two principals can chime in on that, but you dove into the STAR data. Former principal. But STAR was a great product, but it was missing a couple pieces that we needed, and that iReady and IXL give us those pieces.
Will teachers have access to that level of the benchmark assessment for their students?
The benchmark?
For STAR and...
Yes.
Yeah, like on through Open Architect, not just through the platform? Okay.
So once we have it all rolled out and it's all, we make sure that the data's all in there. At some point this year, we're going to be opening that up to teachers so that they can run their own reports of this as well.
Yes, great question. All right, we also have the behavior dashboard, and we picked our favorite student, Big Bird, to show you how this would work. Big Bird has an offense, let's say a cell phone, Placentino. That incident is listed there. Here's the offender. Again, you can imagine if it's a poor behavior day, That would be a strong, long list. And then we have all these graphs to show behavior patterns throughout the school. And this is filtered by date. You can filter by category. You can filter by special education, EL. So it breaks down any category you want to look at as an administrator. You can see the patterns.
And to have this data transition not only to each grade level, but to the next building, because sometimes we say, you know, there's a lot of data that we keep in folders that doesn't necessarily go to the next building, but for a council to be able to flag children that could be at risk as they enter a new building is really
Because as the former principal who owned the majority of the MCAS that occurred in the district, but also, you know, sat between two buildings, middle high school and the transition, I'm so unbelievably excited by this and wishing as far as how we actually correlate and have conversations as far as discipline, attendance, impact on academic performance, and how we can do that. Just even the conversations and eye-opening for families to be like, oh my goodness, this is a fantastic tool.
And then also being able to look at it by demographics and inequities in that respect, because we know that that exists as well, special ed, people of color. So there's all sorts of pieces we can pull from this.
I think it's interesting to be able to have a really data-driven conversation about things that sometimes are a little more like blurry. Yeah, exactly. So
It's been hard for us to.
That's great.
It's hard to bring all that data together and have a tool that actually can do that. It's a thing we know or we see as administrators or what the research tells us, but then actually to be able to pull our very real Holliston data together to tell us those similar stories is at the student level too.
Currently, what Placentino and Miller are doing are these just ginormous Google spreadsheets, which is really cumbersome, and you can't really analyze things, right?
That's a good point, though.
Very tough.
How are we capturing? If some folks are using Google spreadsheets and another dashboard, how are we ensuring all this data is getting in here?
Right, great question. So we're having conversations like, can those Google Sheets be transferred to the gradebook? The dashboard does a great job pulling the gradebook grades and the assignments and the standards, so why can't we put some of these Google Sheet things we're doing into the gradebook? And we can hide those from the public. We usually hide certain assignments from the public, so we're having those conversations.
Okay, so over time, this will just get better.
Yes.
We met with each school. I know I had a chance to meet with my team in Open Architects, and we went through everything from the, if we aligned standards to assignments and test questions and all. You can go deep if you really, over time. It just takes time to build all of those components.
And this is where the curriculum and interventionist specialists are going to get training on this right away, because they'll...
Tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow. Because what's going to happen is now when they put the Dibbles data in or any other data sources get entered into here, it's going to automatically be updated, and they can run the reports in real time and put those intervention groups much more quickly and not have to wait weeks for the data to be...
But some things are going to be transferred right away. Dan has been working, Mr. McLeod has been working with Open Architects, so can you say like Dibbles is being transferred right away, MCAS is being transferred right away, IXL, iReady, they're working on that. So some things we're not going to have to wait on, right? Those will be immediately transferred.
This year, yeah.
So.
Right, basically, it's every night there's a sync, so the dashboard's going to update. But I do want to share, Dr. Kuska just touched on this, the student companion is what our interventionists will be able to use, and that's where they can document interventions. I know it's hard to see, apologies, we'll zoom in next time. But we can actually list interventions, attendance, engagement.
And they are very excited about that.
Yeah, and I do want to share the one school that had a great, what I thought was a great idea. So as you recall, last year we started mailing home STAR assessment results and then physical count. So at Placentino, Dr. Slaney and Ms. Cordero, they had the meeting with Open Architect. They saw all the dashboards, and they said, why can't we take that one dashboard with attendance, Dibbles, all of our other assessments? Why can't we just print that? And it captures everything for the parents. Their entire picture of the child. Why can't we just print that dashboard? So Open Architects actually loved that idea. They hadn't done it before. It's not going to be ready overnight, but they're actually working on a potential solution where we can take that dashboard type view and provide it to parents. Whether it be electronic or printed, we don't know yet, but that's another feature of the product that we're really excited about.
I think this is really exciting. I can see like a lot of potential for how it would inform your school improvement goals, your next generation of your strategic plan. I'm wondering at the high school, like there's a lot in here around supporting like an early warning system. Are you thinking about integrating course grades in there, monitoring who's failing courses, passing courses?
So it already can pull progress report grades, term grades, final grades. I think what we're trying to drill down to is to where, you know, because you could have a paper that's due and the grades it over time, trying to find as many different data points as possible in there. So that's when we, in our meeting with Open Architect, asking about, you know, what can we do about looking at assignments that we talked about, like assessments, looking at different assessments and that being an indicator. I think right now, again, with our schedule the way it is, if you think about it, a class runs 90 days. By the time you had a test, the grade goes in. That's 4 weeks out of the year. That's done. 20 days, 25 days out of the year done for that class. So that'll really help us this year, you know, to start that work, and then, you know, hopefully in the future to be able to really make those interventions happen.
But we're also
much
going to
more
be
quickly.
doing the benchmark assessment three times a year as well, and that data will get pulled into here, so that will help you also put some of those.
That'll be the initial that piece as well. That'll help us with some initial data that will allow us right away to put some interventions in place.
I think, you know, somebody who's missing from the party here is Jess Beatty, but I think what this brings into, you know, into special education as far as you're able to goal tracking and tracking progress, actual interventions that you're putting in the data that you can track on that, like it's very important. It removes a lot of subjectivity out of certain things.
And they would be using the same feature that the interventionists are using to track that.
And some of this data now that we'll have quicker access to can actually inform the goals for the IEP as well. You'll see some of these percentages and whatever put right into the IEP in the future. So we'll come back to you at a later date when we do have some more data to share, and you can decide when you'd like us to present on that. But I suspect that our principals will all be, I've already talked about bringing some of this data into our goals discussion in October will be the next step as well.
Thanks, Dan.
Anytime, you're welcome. This is fun stuff.
Very cool.
Any questions, suggestions? We're still running behind schedule. But let's see.
Are we doing a school opening? What's next?
We're going to go to central office updates.
So I'm going to let, we have some pictures to show some of the wonderful things that happened this year. I know not everything was perfect, so we will be talking about that a little bit, but I don't want some of the challenges we experienced with busing and so forth this year to overshadow the amazing opening we've had overall. It's been very positive. So I did ask Joni, and I also worked with her to put some pictures together to share with you related to, in the overall, I feel very positive opening we've had at all levels. Put that up.
So really excited to share what's been going on. I put together what's been going on this summer, and so we'll go over some things. New staff orientation, for those of you who don't know, was held on August 19th and 20th. The first day, the paras and the new staff both came. Second day, the teachers and the mentors, if possible, came. So there were presentations from all central administration as well as the building leaders. Presentations on the following topics: embarking on their journey in Holliston, roadmap to student success, state safe and supportive schools in Holliston, building bridges together, district finance and operations, district tech overview, educator evaluation and Teach Point, that's our evaluation platform, strategic plan, understanding by design curriculum documentation, bus tour of the community, time with their mentors and principals, and time with new colleagues. So very successful 2 days. Dan's tech department worked with me on taping all the presentations. so those are accessible to all staff to keep referring back to them over the course of the year. Staff's first day, I wanted to thank the PTO for providing a incredible welcome back breakfast that everyone enjoyed in the cafeteria. Let me go to the next slide. We had the superintendent's welcome, and then Jay Patel, who Chair Mr. Alfred talked about. He talked about Project 351, an incredible student there, very well spoken, and talked about how Project 351 has impacted him as well as the students in Holliston. School committee chair also presented, as well as HFT president with longevity awards. And then the teachers went back to their buildings for faculty meetings.
Thank you for picking what must have been the absolute best picture.
You're welcome.
I do want to comment on Jay, just because, I've gotten to know Jay the last 2+ years. He started as our Project 351 ambassador in 8th grade in 2022 at Rams, and he talked, very openly about his disability and how his hearing loss has impacted his ability to communicate at times. And that student, having seen him grow and prosper the last few years, Project 351, and all the amazing teachers and administrators he's had in the district has made such a world of difference. This summer he came to our Mass Superintendent's Conference, and that's why I asked him to come speak with us. Last year he worked with Kala on Project 351 Celtics Playbook Initiative, which I had applied for the last 2 years, and we're going to apply to again. So 2 of our students are able to attend these training sessions, and they become trainers for the district. So Jay and Kala last year, I watched him very nervous at first, training our middle school students 3 times or 4 times last year, I forget. And I kept checking in with him, but then to see him show up and speak in front of 500+ superintendents and assistant superintendents, I was amazed, because he didn't tell me he was going to be there. He kind of surprised me, and he put up a very nice slide about the work that we've done together. So I was so proud to see him come back and give back to the district, and he's a student that we will continue to follow now as a junior this year.
And then we have some really nice pictures from all 4 schools, their opening days. So there's some sweet pictures for Placentina's first day. We've gone to Miller. We did a lot of great organizing in the cafetorium, so did Placentino. So they really utilized our spaces to organize the students very well.
And can I just, I didn't have pictures in time to put in here. I should have been able to add them tonight, but I had forgotten. But today we did have first day for pre-K and kindergarten. So I know you were there with Dr. Jordan, and I was there. And I ran from kindergarten over to help with preschool because they were happening pretty closely. I only saw one student crying. We had a very hard time, one particular student, but in general, I was amazed.
Oh, boy.
I was very surprised. I saw some nervous kindergartners, but I didn't see tears unless after I left you did, but I did not.
Parents crying, mostly parents
So they were doing a nice job, and then we had a very good end of the day dismissal procedure as well, so that was great to see.
Some nice pictures from Rams. And students were excited to get back in the classrooms. And then finally at the high school, and we have a new therapy dog.
Yes, so those of you who knew Spencer, and now I'm drawing a blank. Penny. Thank you. So I did post some pictures of Spencer and Penny, were the former therapy dogs that have come to Holliston High School in the past. As you probably know, Spencer was always holding the flag with Penny at there's actually now a memorial that had been done in Hopkinton for the marathon. So I did post a picture of formerly Spencer and Penny, and this is Jimmy. Jimmy is 18 months, so I got to meet him at opening day the other day. And his sister, whom I don't recall her name, is 8 months old, and she will be coming to join us as well. Jimmy was a little bit bored and a little bit lazy that day, and I was informed by his trainer that his sister actually is much more suited to this work, but he's doing a very good job. It takes over, is it 2.5 years?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's between 2 to 3 years. Right. We do have therapy dogs, so that's those that you don't know, at Placentino. Anne Marie Cohen brings her dogs to school for us, and We used to have dogs at Rams, and we used to have a dog at Miller, but we do have still Nugget at the high school, and Nugget I also saw on opening day, was very happy to be there as well.
And then we had a wonderful welcome to school from the high school.
I'll just play a
And
quick
this
little
band.
clip. Oops.
There's the detentions.
Oh, I had my volume off, so.
Nice, I love it.
Oh, it's not gonna roll. You get the idea. At any rate, Mr. Calais has been out there the last few years with, I can't get back into that. Okay, playgrounds. I did walk around. It was a little hot, but I did walk around because I wanted to get current pictures for you, so I'll let Dr. Jordan talk a little about the work we've done over the summer, this playground. On the playgrounds.
This has been a great project, well overdue, and I think Mr. Boudet and I have been pretty excited about the outcome so far. I spoke to James Keast, who's assisting with us on this, and hopeful that it will be completed early next week is the projection for those. So that's considering when they broke ground and where we are right now. I think it's a pretty efficient turnaround.
That's great. Those playgrounds.
Yeah, they're looking great.
Needed a little work. They were always safe, but it's always good to make some
Yes,
progress.
I think students will be very happy.
What's that?
The padding, my son fell, and no signs that he fell.
Awesome, and I will say, the
I need
nurses
padding
did
too.
say, even prior to the new changes, they did not have any broken bones or anything in the past. But clearly there was updated cosmetically for sure. We had some issues
Back
that
in
we
the
wanted to
day,
address.
there was cement under those monkey bars, I'm just saying.
And we all turned out great, right?
Cement
I never did my head.
Huh?
Cement, it is a cement pad that they put covering over. So-
Yeah.
Right.
'Cause they have to-
No, I mean,
they have to
it's hard cement.
No, they have to, it's all other kind of cement, but hard. To anchor the equipment, it has to have cement.
It's just pushing.
I don't mean here, I mean it growing up. There was just monkey bars and concrete and merry-go-rounds, and there was
Wasn't
no
a moderate
mulch
pad.
or pads or anything. It was, free-for-all.
But I will say that visually, I feel like also additionally, it's very visually appealing as
It
far as
is,
what we're adding
nice.
to the front of the school.
Fancy.
There's some additional work we're doing in front of Miller to kind of clean that up. Our Outdoor Alliance has been very helpful in kind of cleaning up kind of the integrity and kind of the aesthetics of the outsides of our building, and I think this adds to it.
And then, as you know, we talked about other projects that we were planning on doing this summer, one of them being the camera project and the auditorium wall. It's finally done. I know that I'll let either Mr. Boudet or Dr. Dodd talk about that a little bit more, but I believe we said 20-plus years that was on the capital requests. So this is the first year we were able to get the town to be able to fund that as a capital request. And once it got funded, James Keast on the town side worked very diligently to make sure this project happened. Do you want to give us a little update on that?
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, speaking of aesthetics, like it fits in, it matches what the roofing or the cover that's over the field house. Enough that like when I kind of shifted into this role, I was like, can somebody show me where they did the project? It's like the whole thing, that whole thing right there. And these photos, we had kind of the final, Mr. Boudet and I had the final walkthrough earlier this morning with the company that did the work. There are a handful of punch list things that need to be kind of cleaned up or whatever, but they did great work, and we've got some, it's nice to get up there and kind of get a close look at the finished product.
And I think, I know, Mr. Boudet, you can talk about the fact that you put this through as a capital request for many, many years. I believe the school committee voted it all those years. And
No,
but
school
some other
committee,
years
no,
did?
school
Okay.
committee turned it down, no.
Okay, so yes, because of and part of this was that we were also putting an SOI, we've had 6 SOIs put forward for the MSBA project for hopefully getting a new high school. So there was, because we saw a figure of anywhere between $750 to $1 million, there was not a desire to spend that kind of money if we were going to replace the high school, but then it's been so many years of this leaking that The town did.
And it didn't cost that much.
Exactly, that's the thing, we weren't going to spend $1 million.
But it was a lot.
The price hasn't changed much in the 20 years, in all honesty. I mean, it started as a $500,000 project, only went to $700,000. But the challenge, or the benefit that we had, I shouldn't say challenge, the challenge was getting funding. The benefit it had with all of our ARPA money that came in, the town was able to prioritize a number of capital projects with that. It allowed us to kind of piggyback onto there, so.
Which if we didn't have that, we probably wouldn't have had it done again. So they water tested it. And
Yeah, there's one spot that they're still playing around with a little bit, so.
I just want to be clear, I liked the color that they painted it.
The green.
We talked to them today about it. They offered to go back.
We're in Boston Globe, I think.
You mean the green, you like the green?
It was a
The
green.
two-faced color?
It was awesome.
Yeah, I want a mural up there, that's what I want.
I like that idea.
Why?
Stone it off color, you know?
You underwrite the insurance policy to send kids up there.
No, I'm not going to put kids up there. I mean, artists, we have a whole artist community here. Yeah.
So if you recall, a few years ago, we talked about how we had exterior cameras on all 4 buildings, but we did not have interior cameras, and we worked to get some funds to put interior cameras of 5 or 6 at the high school and middle school, and we still had pockets where we could not see if there was a serious safety issue. So we did allocate some small amount of funds to increase the cameras, but now we have interior cameras at all 4 buildings. Do you want to
At
talk
entrances, mostly, right?
About, do you want to talk about where they are?
We put another 20 cameras into place. We had 10 between the high school and middle school in the past. We added 5 more to each building. While the likelihood of being able to cover every inch of every interior space is 0. We do cover a lot of the major places, and again, you use it when things go wrong, and it's not going to be preventative. It's going to be something that as you do either as it's happening or after it's happened, to do investigation. So if you look at the grand total, that's 30 on the inside and another 36 on the outside. So we have 66 cameras right now on our campus. So
we are watching, not us, you, but
when we need to.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece, we've had situations where students on an IEP might have a social-emotional breakdown, and we've had bolting issues when a child might be hiding somewhere, to be able to go through the cameras and be able to visually see the path they took more efficiently and quickly, and be able to locate, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would say as a principal, I've found that cameras very useful. I think that they also serve as especially for the Wiley middle schooler, serves as a preventative tool as well, knowing that camera is aimed right into the place that they want to be the most naughty. So,
do we have smile?
I know I should add those signs, right?
Just really make sure that they.
Think, next thing.
No, don't say think.
So we've been very busy, and by far and large just have had a very successful opening. Students are happy to be back. Staff was very excited to be back the other day, and we're looking forward to the days to come. Did you have anything else on finance and operations to add?
Mr. Boudet, did you do your tour?
yes, I did. Yes.
Well done.
The last time.
The last time.
I'm trying to make it the last time for a number of years.
We can move on.
Okay. So reports from subcommittees, communications?
Can I?
Oh.
I had some things to
Oh,
report.
sorry, I thought you were.
Okay. I wanted to make sure you guys saw, so we're really excited. It's been a lot of work, but we created French Immersion Eureka Math Squared student workbooks. And they were translated by Aaron Snyder and Dylan Noss, our own staff. And much research by Dan and Keith to figure out what printer to create the booklets, and I'll pass some examples around. Krista Marino, who is the Placentino STEM coordinator, and myself delivered all the French immersion books to teachers prior to the students' arrival, and they were really surprised and pleasantly really excited to have these. So I'll just pass these around. This is the English version of the kindergarten, but those two are the translated ones.
Right, so the company could not and would not translate for us, so we had to come up with our own solution so that our students could access it. So this is what the company gave us in English, and these are the ones that Joni was able to actually help reproduce with the help of our French immersion teachers.
So they're really nice. I also very briefly wanted to tell you, we're very busy with a lot of staff completing summer curriculum work. and I just want to briefly tell you about what things were done. So there was a development of a new French immersion class at the high school called Sounds and Screens. K through 12 pathways to seal by literacy work, K through 12 world language proficiency mapping and rubrics, and French immersion curriculum writing. All three of those things came out of recommendations from the World Language Review. Sexual health units for middle school, grades 3 and 4 health units, development of organic chemistry, a new class at the high school, development of Project Lead the Way, a new class at the high school. Let's see, conceptual physics course creation at the high school, a new course. Social studies at the high school, election 2024 revamp. 12th grade ELA course revision, AP language, new unit development, 9th grade lit circles unit development, high school math, reveal curriculum work, RAMS math curriculum shifts, did a ton of work over it, so did a lot of work in prep for the math study group. 6th grade research unit and argument writing unit, 8th grade civics project revamp, RAMS SAT curriculum map, Miller Eureka Math Squared Montessori crosswalk of curriculum, Placentino Eureka Math Squared curriculum documentation, grades 3 through 5 writing scope and sequence development, pre-K through 2 ELA map and update of scope and sequence. And then Mr. McLeod can talk about some curriculum work he was able to complete.
Yes, so we continue the project of migrating our Google sites, mainly Google sites, to our final site platform, which is translatable. So we're still trying to do that. We did extended day, and sorry, I'm drawing some high school sites. I believe we did Global Citizens, but I can't be positive on that. Anyway, we continued that work. The main thing was we developed documentation for the new devices our staff received over the summer. So our staff developed training videos and documentation to help teachers navigate the new device.
And Jess Beatty and Jerry Overnay were also able to have curriculum summer work done for both of them. And I'm not sure, I did not know the details, but ton of busy work over the summer.
Right, we're still getting some of those devices out, but just quickly, all teachers will have a new device and all administrators.
Correct. It's teachers, administrators, and counselors all have new devices. Did not include paraprofessionals and front office staff. They're not in this refresh. So there's different, people are a little confused, but that's how we do our refreshment cycles.
But they will have access. They still have access to computers,
Of course,
just
yeah,
not the new ones.
definitely. Yeah, they just don't have the new devices.
I just want to add one thing, that one thing we left out was with the production of those books. We'd gone out, Dan had gone out and gotten a couple of quotes from printing vendors at around mid-30s is what they were talking about.
Per year.
For every year. We were able to acquire the copier that did those books for $19,000. So between toner and paper, we're still looking at less than $25,000 easily. And that's, and that 19,000 of that 25 goes away in years 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it's going to be in the long run a big savings for the district.
So you can see they came out very professional.
So if you
Really
enter
nice
central
job.
office in the next few days, you'll see when Mr. Boudet found out that much larger than life copier was coming and we had no place to put it. We had to come up with a quick plan, so you're going to see that we've, not just for that reason, but that actually made us move a lot quicker. So many of us are moving our offices to try to create efficiencies with departments. There's a lot of reasons behind our moves. But, and Dr. Jordan coming up with different things, but that copier forced us to do it sooner than later. So I moved all of my office. I'm now in Mr. McLeod's office. He's going to be in Mr. Boudet's former office, but we'll get you the locations when you're up there. Just be prepared that you're not going to find people in the same places moving forward. But the copier forced our hands a little quicker than expected, and it was
113 inches wide.
It's very large.
Biggest copy I've ever seen.
How'd you get it in there?
I know, right?
Very carefully.
We didn't get it in.
They connect it once.
It's in 3 pieces. So.
Wow.
Okay.
right, so, Dr. Bernard, apologize, but is that?
That's it.
You're good now?
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, that was, Keith?
We're good.
Good? All right, subcommittees, communications.
We had a couple of meetings over the summer, mostly working on the FAQs that I posted on the website. I know we've got a couple additional things we're trying out over the next, got a meeting scheduled on Wednesday. That's okay. So we'll be adding some additional information, basically based on kind of these conversations, and put the link to the interview with Mary Dean-Joe as well. That had a lot of good information.
Okay. Policy.
Well, we met last night, but we'll schedule a meeting in the next couple of weeks. This was kind of out of order. Just trying to get that one
Sure.
handbook piece done.
Makes sense.
And budget anticipates having a meeting before our next school committee meeting. I just have to reach out and discuss everyone's availability. I don't have a date.
September 11th.
I know.
No, September 11th.
We can talk about that.
And superintendent evaluation.
Same. Schedule something this month.
Okay. One thing I was also saying just about going on, I did talk or sort of exchange messages with the town administrator and some of the FinCom members just about ensuring that we answer any questions that they have. We did provide the select board and the finance committee with a write-up of our projections that Keith and Dr. Jordan and I worked on. FinCom has chosen not to meet again before the overrider take a position on it. Certainly they haven't. I know some members of the community have been asking them to, but I think that if any of them weigh in, personally they may do that, but it will not be meeting to discuss it.
Can you share that with the committee, please?
Oh, it's on the town website.
Oh, okay.
Yep. It says it's from the chair. So
Okay.
Share the select board on Monday.
It was shared with the select board officially on Monday, yeah. But it was sent a few weeks prior to that. All right. So old business. I don't know why I put it under old business, but just a discussion, sort of school openings, some challenges, anything that we just talk about, just to sort of. And this is more like just to sort of provide information to the community that may not have seen some of it, and explain what we're doing to remedy those challenges.
So Mr. Burdett worked with his department on helping to get transportation up and running this summer. So I've asked him to give you an update on some things that occurred, even though he's communicated some of this already.
Sure. As many of you know, last year was our first year with this new software package, so the end of that is the turnover process of the students and the routes to the next year. We're dealing with a veteran project manager from the company's TransFinder, and she laid out a plan that I would have thought we would have done exactly kind of what we did when we started, which is start with all new people, all new everything, and plow forward. She said, "Oh, you don't want to do that? We never do that anywhere. We just roll things over." And okay, roll things over. You know I don't, it's your product. There's a couple unfortunate byproducts of rolling it over. We as a district do something that many, and I'll maybe even say most districts don't do, which is allow people to kind of have multiple places they get off the bus in a given week. It's something that she didn't take account for. It created some data issues when the routes got mapped out the first time. Because literally we had children going to the wrong stops. Parents didn't request a new stop, but I was still sending them to the original stop because that's what was there. Because the old stops did not get cleared out. So, nor did they, which I guess I don't know if they can do. We're going to have to find that out going forward. Nor did they get restated to at least their home stop. So we had parents who literally wanted to have their children picked up their home, and that's not what we produced because. Again, the software predetermined that they wanted to go to this new stop that did not get cleared out by the company. So that was the first challenge. Going down the path, so we got a late start on our routing there. Secondarily, on the ongoing basis of, parents are, the July 15th, around that date, we usually pick a Friday, or, no, we usually pick a Friday to get people through to Monday. Should say that out loud. We usually pick a Friday as the cutoff date. They don't pay attention to it. More people than ever handed things in late, which again throws us behind. And as much as we want to set a hard and fast date, you know, when you have a child that needs a bus that may be of a certain age where we can't have them walk a half a mile to a bus stop, we have to start adding stops, possibly moving routes. And that, you know, again, you set up one plan, and literally today, we actually turned around an entire route today. You know, because of changes that have happened and challenges we've had with the third problem that happened late, which was, unfortunately, the bus company had two drivers that resigned. They knew that one was going to probably leave, one left unexpectedly, so we ended up having to pull a high school route, or they did from where we had routed it. They pulled a high school route on Monday last week, and they tried doing a middle school route. They couldn't get that in. They pulled a Placentino route, on either late Monday or early Tuesday. So again, we had to reproduce the passes again. And so all these things kept combining to the problems that we had that stretched it out further and further. One of the unfortunate things that they didn't tell us was that a Miller School bus was going to run. We now only have two buses that do runs that do the high school runs that don't do elementary runs. They had one of the elementary buses do one of those runs, which unfortunately that means they got a late start, because the two longer runs, we could start them as early as we want because there's no run before it. So that, again, compounded that run to a really bad fashion, in all honesty. And it's something we didn't know about. I mean, I can't, David was at down there, and it's like, they'd be saying, well, where's bus 15? It's like, what do you mean, where's bus 15? You know, and we found out that that bus 15 had, in the morning run, the Miller run, had driven, I think, bus 7, and now was doing 15, which is like, you know, so we've been chasing our tails a little bit, to say the least, and still with the ongoing thing of people bringing making bus requests today. I produced another 11 or 12 passes today for people who requested passes today. This is, you know, I'm not sure, recommendation-wise going forward, I'm not sure, the questions are going to be, do we continue to allow multiple stops? It creates a complicating factor that, while the software can handle, it's still taking multiple seats on a bus, especially going to the potential of next year of making a major change to our bus runs. You know, how hard and fast do we make that date? I mean, you know, that's a big thing. The other thing that I am going to strongly recommend, though, is that I don't know if, was anybody on the committee, Cynthia, were you on the committee before we had bus fees or not?
No.
Okay. Before we had bus fees, it's actually in the policy, before we had bus fees, we had mileage requirements. We wouldn't transport children from certain miles because, again, it should be a walk, it should be a safe route to school, or whatever you want to say. We have a great number is a big exaggeration. We have a non-insignificant number of students that are one step from getting driven across the street. And, you know, it adds stops, times, you know, for things that don't need to happen. And then by the springtime, those children are walking anyway. You know, and so it's doing things that are harming our ability to route efficiently and effectively by having these one-offs. And unfortunately, there's a lot of one-offs. So it's been a discouraging start. We're working through it. I mean, it's, you know, people can certainly, in the office, can certainly attest to the amount that we're working through it. I mean, on Monday night, I mean, you reminded me that I'd agreed to Zoom into the meeting, and I literally just left the office at whatever time you hit me, 8 something. You know, and Kim, who works for me, was still there. She left around 9.
It was later than that.
Yeah. But I'm saying is that this is, you know, again, we're working the problem. There's nobody in now our organization that is shirking their duty or taking this lightly. I mean, it's just not the case. So, you know, but, you know, again, we're working it and doing the best to grind through it. So.
I do think we're going to have to think about, I had not heard of ever being allowed multiple stops as a parent in my own community or even other districts I've worked. It's very complicated. I think the margin for error and then just the things that we're going to be looking at moving forward, we may not, it would be my recommendation that we wouldn't be able to do that moving forward because it just creates more complications to an already very challenged transportation system.
It's tough on the driver, too. I mean, the driver, is it Tuesday? Where is this the day I pick this child up from here, or are they not with me? I mean, it is literally, and we've had requests to have 3 different stops on a given morning or afternoon, 3 different stops depending on the day of the week. And it's, you know, we don't do that. That we refuse, you know.
Is there, I mean, I think we should get some feedback from the community, but then also, is it, if people want that, are they willing to pay for it?
Oh, well, they do. We do charge an extra $100. So there is a fee, but it's just...
It's a lot.
And it's also...
Right. Typically what we're...
Some of it's childcare, some of it is parents who don't live in the same household. You know, I mean, there's a lot of mitigating factors. Some of it's that some days they go to my parents' house, their grandparents' house. There's all sorts of reasons, but at some level,
we can only do so much, I think.
You know,
but at the same time, if they're going to 2 houses because they live in 2 different houses, you know, it's sort of...
I understand, but they manage it on Saturdays. I'm just saying, it's expectations have to be set differently. If, you know...
Well, let's think about it and see if there's a way to sort of, you know, incentivize certain behavior or disincentivize certain behavior. I certainly think that we should look at, you know, you sign up by this date and you get, this is your bus fee, you sign up, you know, late,
Yeah, the $25 is, they don't care. Okay. I'm just saying, that hasn't been a disincentive.
No. Is there a cutoff date at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. It's sometime around the mid-July.
July, yeah.
And again, like I says, we usually try to make it a Friday to give mail the opportunity to get to us on a Monday. You know, and that was the other problem too. I mean, we mailed out passes on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Wednesday and Thursday, but things were not getting there even by Monday. It's just,
it takes forever.
And I understand they took out equipment with the previous regime in the White House. I get that, but still, it's, you know.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, there are things that we're going to review in the transportation department will do differently going into next year, but we just had an unusual layer of events that compounded things.
The only comment I'll make about all of this is I just think the more communication we can do, like as soon as we recognize there's going to be an issue, I felt like there was a lot of stress for families who are waiting for those passes. And even if it's just like, they're coming, don't worry about it, get on a bus. Just so people are aware.
Can we email the schedules, right?
Because I think people understand these kind of glitches. It's just, if they're told.
Right. One thing, and I don't disagree, one thing we did do that's different is that Jody Renee was able to create a form in Power School that made it to the parent portal, that we were able to take the data from the bus pass and propagate it up there. So as we were working this problem, she went off in a different direction, because she couldn't do the routing stuff, but she went off in a different direction to put that together. So we actually do have a new feature. So,
but that's like last week, right?
Right. Okay. Well, I'm saying we didn't need it before, so.
No, but so going forward, at least parents will be able to get the schedule. So when because obviously you can just say, you know what, if you don't have the pass for the first week, we'll waive that. Here's your stop time, and then
the challenge with that, and it's something Susan brought up, and we almost are going to go down that path, except then Jody Renee came up with this other solution. The problem with that is, especially at the high school, middle school run in the Queens, I've got at least 3 full buses, and a 4th that dabbles in there that's full. My neighborhood, Brentwood, is full. You know, if you say, oh yeah, you don't need a pass for the first week, what happens when 78 kids try to get onto a 77 passenger bus? I mean, there's 26 benches. Each bench holds, 25 of the 26 holds 3, one holds 2. But
there was a bus driver that posted online that they have the list of kids, right?
Yes.
So you know, you don't need a pass, but you need to be on a list. I mean,
well, again, you're talking about time then too, though. there is no perfect answer, is my point. There is no, because if the bus driver has to look up your name on the list every time, that's going to be a little bit of a drag on the process, so.
If I can hop in for a second, to your point, the communication, like by putting all of this or more of this in Power School, we're going to leverage all of the communication tools from Power School.
And that's great, because it's better even to have all of that stuff in one place, all of the stuff, like, so the parents know this is where I go for information about buses and other, so I think that's great.
So, in summary, no one's happy with how things went. We all recognize we can and need to do better, but there are multiple causes, some of which were out of our control.
Absolutely.
Anything else about the opening that was challenging?
Nothing that's come my way. And Mr. List, I spoke with you, and you haven't had any other concerns brought to you.
Yeah, I mean, we had some issues with Power School with the initial release of the schedules. Working with Mr. McLeod, Jody Renee, and the APs, we asked Power School to do something. They did something completely different and reran our whole schedule for us. So we had to spend some time on August 14th through still now, finding some of those errors. We put out a form to families to fill out when they find either gaps in the schedule or a missing class, whatever. We had 57 students fill that out of the 800 schedules. But as I said, nothing, I mean, it wasn't fun to try to fix. We're still, as I said, we're still finding some of those errors in there. But nothing has really come my way regarding it.
Any question? Okay. For anyone watching still at 9:54, obviously, if there are concerns, please reach out to the administrators and make sure everyone's aware, because if they're not aware of problems, can't fix them. Okay, so lastly is the ratification of the 2024-2027 contract with the Holliston Cafeteria Association. I will own the fact that I made a mistake. Usually, a lot of times we'll go and have executive session before we discuss contracts to get an update from the negotiating team about anything that may have happened in how the negotiations went. I missed that and did not get that on the schedule. I think there's definitely a benefit to voting on this tonight. Makes it easier administratively, gives people certainty who are in those jobs. On the other hand, I can understand how it's sort of being presented with something for the first time and not having really an opportunity to kind of ask freely questions that may not be answerable publicly could be difficult. So I'm going to let Keith sort of give an overview, and then we'll sort of take a consensus of whether people are ready to vote on it and go from there.
I think we negotiated for 3 sessions with 3, right? Sorry.
I think so.
Yeah, for 3 sessions. I think it was 4 with the unit, and I think while we had an interesting start, I think we got to a real good place. They understood some of our needs, we understood some of their needs, and it didn't require a lot of changes. But again, I'll quickly go over them. We codified the sick leave piece where they could use 5 of their 10 sick days for a family member, and asked for them to provide a doctor's note after day 3, so from day 4 on, if they're out that many consecutive days. And that second piece is the change, is a big change. We were able to eliminate the next clause, because that was embedded now into the sick leave clause, so that provision did that. We raised the pay. Cafeteria has kind of levels of employees. The cook manager kind of runs that kitchen. When they're out sick or at a conference or something like that, somebody will fill in and do those duties, making sure lunches are out in a timely fashion, in an appropriate fashion. That person used to get a $10 a day stipend for doing that extra duty. To increase it to 20 is completely appropriate. I'll be honest with you, I think it's been $10 for 24 years, and I'm not exaggerating. So I did that. The number 6 one was one that we really had to work through a lot. Understanding that when somebody who doesn't work for what doesn't already work here sees a rate of pay that may have paid holidays in there, they're not going to, they don't care if the paid holidays are. I make, this much per hour. Paid holidays traditionally have been used for people who are true hourly people as a mechanism to increase their rate of pay without necessarily showing it as a COLA. At this stage, we want to make sure that we show that they're making more money than they would at Dunkin' Donuts, in all honesty. And so we embedded their 11 paid holidays into their salary, into their rate and salary, and you'll see that computation further down. And again, we view this as something that's positive for them, positive for us to be able to attract people for our vacancies. So this was, I think, a big thing, a good thing for both parties.
And this has come up in other contracts as well, and we really should not be adding holidays for people that aren't full year, because again, it goes back to we want people to see what's the highest hourly rate we can provide them, and when you start watering it down by paying holidays and they don't know what that means to their annual salary, it actually doesn't help us with the attraction.
Exactly. You're just starting with a lower rate. So they made the request to unrecognize the position of cook manager from their unit. They were just not comfortable having a peer be their first line supervisor. So they asked that to be unrecognized. We added the secretary there. We made the request to remove the secretary as well, just because all the 3 cook managers and secretary all report directly to the director. So it just felt weird to kind of have that dichotomy if you were taking out these direct reports to the director, then to have that one. It just didn't make sense, and they agreed.
So we'll end up having to meet with those individuals.
Yes,
Yep,
that's coming in quickly. Raise the allowance for attire. Again, that comes up from every few years. Cynthia knows that firsthand. So, that again to a reasonable level. And the salary schedule, we proposed to them to basically drop a step. Just again raise the floor, which again in this market you need to do. So we dropped a step, renumbered the steps. So if you were on 2, you're still on 2. We did the math. We just demonstrated the math for them. Dropped a step, 5% COLA, and built in the 11 days. So that changes the new starting rate for a general worker, up to $18.79 now for this coming year. So that's, I think, a good rate with regards to at least making us competitive to similar industry, say, type jobs, whether it be a Dunkin' Donuts or something of that nature, without having to deal with people throwing money at you or complaining that their coffee's too cold or things like that. So it's a much better environment to work here. You're working with children. Feeding children. So it's, I think it's no question about that. And we did the same with the part-time people who they only get 1 paid holiday. So we built that in, and then the substitute rate has always been the lowest step on the part-time people's rate. So again, this is something that Sarah participated in. I don't know if your feelings are with what happened. Obviously, Susan and I were there, and
the cafeteria workers did vote, and we do have a signed, ratified copy by them.
Okay. So, if you have any questions, comments,
How many aprons?
it's part of the attire.
It's just part of attire now.
We provide the aprons.
No, I know that.
However many go through the washing machine, I don't know. How many aprons do you wear in a day?
I don't work as a cafeteria.
Okay.
I'm comfortable.
Yeah, I
Is
think,
anyone
yeah.
comfortable?
Yeah.
it's obviously a much shorter contract than
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
than other ones.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. So with that,
Only 3
then,
meetings is pretty good. Mine was like 10.
We had to hear a lot of complaints there.
I did.
so I will entertain a motion to ratify the contract for the 2024-2027 contract with the Holliston Cafeteria Association.
Moved by Dawn.
Seconded by Cynthia.
All those in favor? Aye. Well, actually, let's just do a roll call vote
yeah.
for this. Sarah?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Cynthia?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Dan, I'm a yes as well. And then, so that brings us to the end of our agenda, though I do want to just go back quickly just to sort of the school opening and just see if we can get an update on where we stand staffing-wise and openings.
Yes, I can get you that for the next meeting, but I mean, we're very well staffed with teachers. Unfortunately, we just had a resignation today, sadly, but for teachers, but I think we still do have a handful of paraprofessionals, or maybe.
Do we have any sense where we are? Like, I know at one point it was substantial.
I know that we've hired a few in the last couple of days, so I don't have the current number because I was literally just signing paperwork, so I don't know that Lisa's updated it. I can send that to you so you'll know ahead of time, and then I can talk about it at the next meeting.
And do we think that we're I mean, despite that we're down, I mean, do we think that we're in a pretty decent position to be able to, ensure that we're
Yeah, I mean, we still have.
I wouldn't suggest that we're ever going to be out of compliance, because we'll make sure that we are in compliance, but that we're able to utilize the staff that we have and not need to necessarily.
Yes, it may require some shifting in the next couple of weeks as we have to try to fill some of those gaps. I will say that we were very happy to be able to fill. You had asked me about the chorus position, and I did just meet with our new high school chorus teacher, and also I met with, I'm trying to think what subjects. The 2 positions that I was worried about at the high school are filled, and then unfortunately we did have 1 resignation at the high school. So we would have been all staffed for teachers at the high school. I think we're staffed for everybody else, but maybe 1 special educator at Placentino I think is still open.
Yeah, I mean, we're in better shape than we were last year, and as far as in our licensed positions, definitely, and it's still less openings than we had in our paraprofessionals, and that's where we're.
Yeah, I think we're probably less than half of what the open. We had, I think at this time last year, we were looking at about 28 paraprofessional openings, which was very concerning. I think we're about half of that or less at this point because we just hired a few more. But I'll get you a number.
So we're meeting the needs with our own staff.
At this time, we are, yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are not looking
to hire a chorus teacher at the high school?
Yes.
We did.
Do we also have one from the middle school?
So if you recall, we did the
combined, I know.
3 through 8. We took the positions from Miller and middle school, and I'm hearing it's going. I actually talked with Karen yesterday, and it's going very well.
Okay.
So that the band teacher is shifting to Miller and Rams, and similarly the chorus teacher is working, and it's really going to help build our program, which as we talked about, I think Joni at the end of last year as well.
Good. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else from the committee? All right, with that, our next meeting is September 12th. There's an important day in between now and then.
What day is it?
September 10th. Yes. So please mark that on your calendars and just make sure to vote. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn, as we do not have executive session. It's just a straight adjournment.
Moved by Dawn.
Seconded by Cynthia.
All in favor? That carries unanimously, 7-0. With that, we are adjourned. Good night.